that's what I want to start off here with you all. So
Well, thank you for the work.
Thanks for having us, man. This is a real honor to be here, and for you to host all four of us. It's really special.
well, it's the honor is really mine, guys, and I really do mean that, because so I'm going to start off with this here because it really started off obviously with 90 Feet from Home, that I actually became aware of Adam, and then as time has gone by, more and more have I become aware of him as an actor. And then I started following you on social media as well, I think on Facebook initially. And then from there, I know for a fact we've interacted from time to time, but it's kind of a blur now because so many things have gone through in the last week that some things I'm a little vague on at this point. But I do know that we have conversed through social media in some capacity here. But one of the things that I have picked up from, especially from Rough Cut, was that I felt like every story, and I'm talking about all the different stories that are crossing each other's path here, in my mind, and I'm sure you guys can probably confirm here, it has obviously clearly taken from some part of your lives that you've infused to the story. Maybe not necessarily verbatim to a T, but it does have some insight about who you were as individuals and who may have had more of a different type of role that they were successful in, that they were better in than someone else in the production team that could handle certain respects of certain job requirements that maybe Adam may have realized that he wasn't very good at, and figured that Chad would probably handle this better, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. So what I would like to start off with all you guys is asking if when you guys look back at yourselves now, especially at that time when you guys started, because I think Outsiders production started, if I recall correctly from listening to Kenny and Adam speak before, back in 04-ish. Does that sound about right? Is that around the time frame that Outsiders production has started?
Yeah, I think so. Is that right?
Yeah, it was around there. It's about the time I got out of college is when we started it, and I graduated in 04.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you, Jason, because I know that you were still in school at the time in college. I meant that you had wanted Adam to write a film for you, and Adam had already graduated from school, and then had to go, because he's post-grad, he had to kind of sign back into the school in order for him to work on the school film that you were doing. In fact, I wrote it down here if I remember correctly, because I did write down the name, and forgive me for not being prepared because I had the page in front of me, but it is for the movie
Looking for Hope.
Yes, Looking for Hope. That's what I have, because you guys have done quite a few productions as well too. Looking for Hope, Bowling Alley, When I Find Bin Laden, The Cellar, and then of course The Unusual Calling of Charlie Christmas, and then Rough Cut, and obviously Play It Loud. So, and here's the thing that I was actually really curious to learn about Looking for Hope, because you, Adam, had pointed out that the title, that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking about the other film. It was the other film, Thunder Road. That was the film that I was thinking of. That's what I was getting confused with.
Those are the same. It's the same film.
Oh, it's the same film. So that's right, because you had to change the title from Thunder Road to Looking for Hope because of the legalities behind the title. Is that what I remember hearing correctly?
Yeah, it was actually mildly terrifying, because we had it was a college senior project for Jace, and I came back and we worked together on it. Kenny was a part of it. Jason Garner is one of our actors. It's in all of our stuff, all of our productions. He plays Punch and Rough Cut. But Jace was the producer, so Jace was handling all the basically carrying the team there, and he got a call from Jace, you tell him.
I can't remember names or anything, but I got a call from a lawyer that was based in LA.
Right.
That was representing Robert Mitchum.
Yeah. It was probably like his brother or something, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think his brother, I guess his brother lived in Tulsa or something and saw an article about us going to show it and got a hold of the family or whatever. I don't know. But we got a call from the lawyer and asked us to cease and desist because they had trademarked the name.
But they gave you guys the ability to play the film at the screening you were having for that evening. So that also meant that you had the ability to still use the name until after the screening. You had to have that changed for all the legal reasons.
Yeah, we literally got the call, like they saw the media or the news articles and stuff for that screening.
Right.
So they literally got the call like a day or two before, and it was like nothing we could do about it. It was everywhere. So, or at least everywhere in our little circle.
It was such a bully move. I mean, really. Yeah. We had nothing. We made it from nothing. It was based off of Springsteen's Thunder Road, who he took that from the Mitchum film. So everybody was stealing from everybody, but then we were like the broke idiots in Shawnee, and I was terrified. I was like, I don't have anything they can take if they sue me, like my shirt. I mean, it was
on the road shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, 24, 25 with nothing. Yeah.
And looking back now, kind of knowing legalities of like, you can't copyright a title.
It's right. Like, so that's what I heard you say before that. So you could have, you actually could have kept the name there, but not knowing anything about it at the time, sorry, I was aware.
No. I argued that. I said that to their face, like on the phone, that you can't copyright things, all that kind of stuff. And they said they didn't have it copyrighted; they had it trademarked, because you can't trademark stuff. So we're infringing on their trademarks.
Okay.
So that's what they were.
I think the science is still out on that.
Yeah. I think if Vanilla Ice can keep his song under pressure.
Well, technically it's a different beat if you want to get all technical about it, but well, you know, so here's the thing though about the that particular film that Adam had mentioned before in a previous interview that I had heard about. That film, if I remember hearing correctly, was running about 4 hours long. It's a black and white film. So there's a lot that, and I'll be honest with you, I really did. I was going to reach out to Adam too and say, hey, do you guys have a copy of that film? Because I would love to see the 4 hour run of that film, because I really want to see what it was that, because, you know, you had mentioned before that it's, you know, it's a lot of heart, a lot of passion, so on and so forth. But in terms of the technical aspect, you pointed out that, you know, you could hear the sound quality, the production, so on and so forth. It was obvious that you guys were making your first film, but despite that, though, you had something that you felt like you were working off of, because then you had a better understanding what it took to make film and how to work on a production. And as a result of that, how you all work together in figuring out who's better at what in some capacity here. Right. So, you know, I'm not sure if the film has ever been intended on being released in some capacity for the public to check out, because if you're leaving at a 4 hour runtime, I'll be honest with you, I want to check it out, because I want to see what it is you guys were starting off with here to where you guys ended up so far with things are right now.
I don't know if we've got a copy of it somewhere. Yeah.
I don't think we have like what we released, which didn't end up being 4 hours.
It's like on laser disc.
I have a laser disc player too. So, but, yeah. Well, so I mean, like, so when you look at, I'm not sure if you guys go back and revisit the film though, and I'm not sure if you guys are ones to go back and reflect and actually watch things you guys have done in the past. But when you think about it now, you know, what exactly are you guys taking away from that experience, apart from, you know, what it took to make a film, but as far as you growing as an individual, as a person, as a filmmaker, producer, and so on, like I'm sure each of you guys have taken something different from someone else, you know, as far as the group's concerned, that you guys have felt like had made you to become a better, you know, a better understanding the art of making films much better than when you guys had initially started with the production there. I hope that makes sense with the question I'm asking.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to take that.
I know for me, man, I mean, like, being honest, what I think I learned from it was how talented my friends were. I mean, because it was such a kind of an enormous undertaking. We really didn't know what we were getting into when we got into it, or we probably wouldn't have done it. And then once you kind of get to the other side of it, you know, it's kind of a cave that you wander into for quite some time. And then you come out of that journey, and there is a bond that you develop on a film set at 3 a.m. that's not unlike, you know, the bonds of a lot of athletic teams or something like that. You're going through discomfort and hard times together. And there's a lot of that on a set, especially on an indie set, you know, but on even big budget movies. I mean, those are tough, you know, and those Lord of the Rings guys end up going and getting tattoos together. I mean, it's a really bonding experience. I think for me, like, you know, watching Jace work, and then I think you can see his progression as a shooter or a director of photography. It's immense. I mean, watch his stuff and Play It Loud, and you just see complete evolution and transformation. Yeah. It was the first time that we had worked with Kenny as an actor on a serious tip. Jason Garner, our lead, was fantastic and authentic. I think it made me realize that there are stories to tell here, and and here meaning anywhere, and that you can find people who are talented enough to tell them if they've got the sort of the stick-to-itiveness you know, and then a desire to get better. Because if we were still making movies at that quality, we should have stopped 20 years ago, you know. Yeah. But I think that's it's. I was surprised by the talent of my friends, really, and then also people say it all the time. Now it doesn't do as much now, but like when you making your first movie is an achievement. So when people say, "Oh, well, you know, you finished it," that's the thing. Well, I think for your first movie, a lot of times it absolutely is showing yourself you can finish what you start. I mean, that's pretty important.
What's everyone else's take on their experience on the production and the first time you guys working together here? Do you guys have a different perspective on that for yourselves as well? Whoever wants to take it up next.
I didn't come along till later, so they can answer that question.
No, I mean, it was college. It was an experience. It was difficult, a lot of mistakes, but I mean, for me, I discovered something I wanted to do with a group of people I wanted to do it with. So, I mean, that's kind of what I got from it.
Okay. How about for you, Kenny?
Yeah, Adam and Jason and I, especially Adam and I, had worked together a little bit in college, like when I was a little older than them, and just seeing them, and we were friends even before hanging out. But even when they came in, and then on some of their projects that they were doing in college, when I had came back, we were doing some projects there. So we had some experience working together on some of their Adam's college projects before I left, and before that was the first, obviously, you know, major production. And on that, it was just endurance and sticking it out through the whole way. It was the first time we'd all done something that immense, you know, like just holding a boom mic at 3 a.m. at Shawnee Lake. I remember that specifically, in the back of a truck, and using, to show the level of budget, using flashlights for helping with some of the lights. So it was just I don't even know how to explain it. I kind of goes along with what Jason said a little bit too. Just it wasn't even getting the feet wet. It was like getting it muddy and learning to step out of the mud and not be as muddy next time, right?
So
making connections and learning how to do things, you know.
Well, so this kind of actually, because you guys kind of touched upon it before about Tulsa. Because here's the thing, Oklahoma, I meant to say. Because here's the thing that I've actually started appreciating in the last, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 years, where I'm starting to hear more about filmmakers, local filmmakers, doing productions in their respective state or town. In this case, you know, we're speaking for you guys directly about Oklahoma, which is obviously in most people's mind is not going to be considered for an ideal place to make films. And I understand for the reasons why, because we've all been more or less, I guess the best way, for lack of a better way of saying it, you know, trained to feel that you got to go to Hollywood where just everything's going to be made at. And then nowadays where productions moved everywhere across the country, where you have New Orleans, Atlanta now, Wilmington, North Carolina, which has been there for a number of years, New York, Albuquerque, and in parts of Canada as well too, where you have these hot spots where films are being made because they have incentive for them to make the movies, especially for these larger productions. But for yourselves though, I understand that it was important for you guys to make films in your respective state, but and I would imagine too at certain points you may have felt like, you know, maybe we should step out of our comfort zone, if you will, for us to make film elsewhere, understanding the challenges that would come with that. But we might as well just stick with it and do it here and make our homes here as far as making films is concerned. So was that the main priority in the beginning, or did it just kind of come by default as you guys were starting to make the film for this first time around? So I wasn't sure if that was a thought process at any point, maybe until after the fact or somewhere in the middle of production.
Well, I mean, like, I know at least for me, and I mean, like Jason and Kenny probably too. I mean, like, we're a little bit older than we're old. And I know that like some of the films that inspired me as an indie filmmaker, I mean, it was kind of that boom of indie film, like where, you know, you go and you get to Sundance and then that explodes your career, or the Kevin Smith type thing. But I was even more like drawn to like Ed Burns. And Ed Burns, the Brothers McMullen and She's the One, and a whole bunch of other films. They were very indie. They were very New York, frequently very Irish family, and it was people talking in houses. And I mean, at that time, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, it's gotten easy with technology. Everybody has the capability to make a movie technologically so much easier and better on that level than what Burns did. But I was just so captivated by the idea that people could write dialogue and write characters, and the more specific they were to whatever world they were living in, the more universal they became. And I mean, I heard a quote from, I think it was Dostoevsky or whatever, where he's saying, like, tell the story of your village and you've told the story of the whole world. I just butchered that. But the idea of writing what you know, telling stories about people here whose lives and experiences and perspectives are just as relevant as any life or experience or perspective anywhere. I mean, love here is still love, fear here, rage here, all of those things. And you know, you don't get a lot of those stories. I mean, how many you know, grizzled LA cop stories can they tell? Right. You know, and so I think we wanted to try to embrace that and be as authentic to ourselves as possible. And you know, obviously, I don't want every script I write to take place on a dirt road, but I don't run away from it if that's part of the setting, you know, of the characters and their lives. So I don't, and we never hit a dollar amount that would make any kind of an incentive make sense for us. I mean, our incentives were like, hey, I know this person who owns this business, and half of Shawnee loves Kenny Pitts, and everybody, you know, has a rent house we can borrow. So it was like, what are the resources we have available here that if we went out to California or New York or these other places, we'd be having to, you know, pay for all this other stuff, you know?
Right. So, you know, with now the way things are going as far as the filming community in Oklahoma for you guys, do you feel like since you guys have started, that the filming community in Oklahoma has gotten bigger, stronger, or is it still kind of more or less you feel like in the early stages of trying to get his footing in the door when it comes to the industry in Oklahoma?
I think all of that. I think it's been growing for quite a few years now, and it's still at a good infancy stage of where I think it's going to be. You know, Hollywood Mid-America. There was a nickname they had for it. Haywood.
I know what you're talking about. I forgot what it's called, but yeah, I know what you're referring to.
Oakeywood. Is that it?
I don't remember, but I remember hearing something about it.
It's been growing ever since we've done it. Started. You can see it growing immensely, and you know, Oklahoma. I think entertainment in general, and it started with like when the Thunder came in, that picked up on a lot of people wanting to go to entertainment, and I think it trickled into a lot of forms of entertainment. Plus, not to downplay any of the talent we have here, there's a lot of actors, there's a lot of directors and producers here who are doing good work. And so I think what you said about it growing even from the couple of years we were started, it's been growing a lot since then, but I think it still is in a positive forward motion that we don't even know where it's going to go. We're mid-America, and I think great things are happening now. And in 5 years, I just think we're going to look back at this conversation, and I think we're going to be amazed at where it is, but happy and maybe a little predictive because it's going to be cool.
What about for you, either you or Chad? You guys, Jason and Chad, meant to say, do you guys have a little bit of a perspective on how you feel how the community is going out there when it comes to productions and anything related to the film industry?
I mean, I think there's a certain element of struggle to it, you know, in terms of the bigger productions. Obviously, we've got in the last 3 or 4 years, we've had 2 Oscar-nominated films that were filmed here, and I assume once Killers of the Flower Moon comes out, it'll probably be on that list. So, you know, from the highest echelon down to, you know, the independent stuff is still going on. There's still guys that are coming up like we did. So it's running the gamut of all that, and they're trying to work out the politics and the business end of the big stuff that's happening, which is what it is. Some of it's gross, some of it's just part of the business world. So it will be interesting to see over the next, probably, like Kenny said, 5 years, see how sustainable that is and what that ends up looking like in terms of the productions and where, you know, groups like us, where we're as interested in making stuff as we are anything else. And that, I think I speak for all of us. When money starts coming and getting involved in it, kind of fucks things up, to be honest with you. I mean, it gets ugly. Yeah. And so at that point, it's like, I think we'd rather just make the stuff that we make. You know, I think I speak for all of us when I say that.
Yeah.
You have anything else to add to that, Jason, for yourself?
No, not really. I mean, I agree with I mean, it has changed. It's crazy how much it has changed over the last 15, 16 years that we've been trying to do it. I mean, when we started, it seemed like there was nothing. And now there is a film industry in Oklahoma that's growing and getting bigger. So it's just, I almost wish like this is what's happening now. Was happening when we started. Would be kind of nice, but it's cool to be around. It's very interesting. It's cool to see.
So for you guys, I'm curious now about how you guys are approaching, with these productions that you're looking into working on here. But when you guys had first started filmmaking and then slowly starting getting an understanding and getting a better feel for how you want to transition from this into possibly making it a full-time career, because I think if I recall correctly, all of you to more or less have full-time gigs outside of working on films and anything else associated with the film industry. But are your guys in the beginning, was your guys' intention on making a film with the hopes that it would give you an opportunity to go and make this a full-time gig? And if so, did you have it under the guise that maybe you wanted to do it for the reasons that I think that most people would have those reasons for the fame and glory, the awards that would come with it if you make a film that would appeal to the mass audience and so on and so forth? Or were you guys doing it strictly for the purity of the art? I hope that's the correct way of saying it. But if did you have any notion about how you were looking at it and how you're perceiving what the goals that you had in mind, and then coming together as a group and say, what is our end game with all this here? Are we all in the same mindset about how we want to go about making films, TV shows, and so on? And if there was a difference there, how would you guys come together and find a middle ground where you all can be on the same page, and how you guys plan on moving forward with Outsiders production?
And you asked very difficult questions.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
No. My answer is no.
No.
Man, we can't speak for one another, but I mean, I know that, yeah, man, Fortune and Glory, like Indiana Jones, come on. My problem is I wanted it done my way. So I wanted us to be successful. Money doesn't really mean a lot to me. Freedom means everything, and money can provide that. And so the idea of having the freedom to make movies and, my wife not leave me, or my children not starve, or hate me for always being gone. I mean, that was the dream to me. And I'm doing it with my best friends. So it was like, and it's also one of those things, man, when you get bit by that, you don't get unbit, and as a writer, like, you can write stories and maybe, okay, you got a stack of papers or a book and you hand it to somebody. That's nowhere near the high that you get when somebody's saying your words aloud and you're filming it and you're putting it together and it becomes real. Because writing and creating for me has always really been about connection, and it's about the connection at some point with the audience. But the probably the most romantic part is the connection I have with the people I'm doing it with. I mean, we wanted to be successful. I don't think we set out, that was never the guiding principle, I think. Otherwise, we would have never made Rough Cut without a real plan as to what we were going to do with it. It was just, at least for me, and I can be kind of verbose and bullying about it, I was a dog chasing cars. I had no idea what I was going to do if I caught them. I just knew I needed to do that.
How about for anyone else here, who about what their intentions were with following their goals here in this in making films and TV?
I think going back to the beginning, it's like, yeah, we all just wanted to do it, kind of a shotgun approach, even with the goals. We like doing it. We like being together. Kind of like, you know, you had mentioned you had followed some of Adam and my superhero and training the band back in the day. Seen some of that. It's like, you know, you get a bunch of people who want to be in a band and just want to play and want to rock. That's the kind of way we were, it seemed like, because it wasn't like a normal production. We had a small main group that held a lot of hats. So we were kind of shotgun approaching kind of a lot of aspects of that, even with positions and where we were going to go with it. And then as we grown, we've really thought more about how we wanted to do it. And, you know, ever since Rough Cut, we've talked about not wanting to do things the way we, on the administrative and business side, not wanting to do it the same way we did, like with Charlie Christmas and Looking for Hope, Run Thunder Road. So it's, I look back and I try to think of my level of evolution with goals, and we've all kind of changed with that. And it's just been fun doing it with these guys.
Nice. And how about for you, Jason? Did you have a perspective on how you were looking at it?
I mean, for me, when it was started, it was, like it would be, the idea would be amazing to make this a career. And then a few years down the road, I got lucky enough to, like, I've had production jobs for like the last 13, 14 years as my 9 to 5. So I got lucky enough to still be able to do productions and get paid for it and learn and grow and have resources, and then have this on the side that didn't matter as much if it was paying the bills. And then I could just do what we wanted to do and didn't have the pressure of it. So it's been kind of a nice blend for me, that I get to have this side that be creative and do what we want with my friends, and then still do what I like to do and enjoy as a day, 9 to 5, and make money.
And for yourself, Chad?
I mean, I think we were all in some ways naive and young, you know. I mean, we didn't, like Adam alluded to earlier, it's the whole, we're going to make a film and it's going to get to Sundance, you know. And it's kind of winning that part of the lottery, but it never, you know, I think looking back, when that didn't happen, it was never going to stop us. I mean, it wasn't going to be like, oh, we didn't get into Sundance, we're never going to do this again. And, you know, Rough Cut is, you kind of hit on it earlier, it's sort of autobiographical in that way, in terms of the struggles and why you keep doing it and bashing your head against that rock. And at the end of the day, I don't know that, you know, at least for us, fame would be cool, fame would be nice, recognition's always awesome, but we don't play golf, you know, we don't fish, we don't have a lot of other like things that we do. This is our outlet and what we do. We're creative people, and it's just who we are, I think.
So this actually leads me to my next question here about you know, what your guys' thought process are when it comes to the creative aspect of the story here, because you know, from what I'm gathering here so far of the productions, as far as like the films and televisions, because in this case with Rough Cut and Charlie Christmas, do you guys have an input as far as what Adam is writing down for the story ideas, the script, and then, you know, you guys give him, hey, this is an idea I have from what I've read so far, try to implement this idea, see how it comes out, and let me know your thoughts? Or is Adam coming up with the entirety of the story, he comes back and shares it with you guys give your two cents, and then he'll come up and says, well, I like this instead over this, so I'm sticking with this? Because I'm curious to see how, you know, just from, you know, I'm mainly gonna be focusing on two properties here that you guys have done, Rough Cut and Charlie Christmas, and then to some extent they'll Play It Loud. But when it comes to those two productions, you know, Adam was the writer on that, but I'm curious if you guys had some input about what it is you guys would also want to see and help creating the story, creating the narrative for the those two productions there. So anything that you guys are able to share when it comes to that respect of the creative process in the stories?
Yeah, Adam's always, as far as when he's written and directed like that, he's always been open to hear the ideas. And of course, us being friends, not just on a business meeting at Monday nights, we were around each other, all of us. And so Adam and I even carpooled to work for a couple of years in the morning, an hour away. So, you know, we would just naturally talk about a lot of things and just ping pong it back and forth. And he's been open to hear it, but none of us are ever butthurt if the idea doesn't get used too. Like, what's that?
Just especially when he comes to me and wants me to put dialogue in like butthurt.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I tried to get him to. No,
let's not speak of
that. But nobody's ever been butthurt with the ping pong. But he'll have read-throughs and be open to, because he's always wanting to hear it out loud live. He'll tell you that about having read-throughs and wanting to hear what he's written down, you know, from a live person rather than just talking with people who have read it themselves.
I see what you're saying.
Well, I mean, obviously the question is not for me, but I would say this, that these guys, whether they realize it or not, heavily influence the scripts. Because especially if I'm writing for them. So like with Charlie Christmas, I wrote that with the intent that Kenny would play Charlie. So I took into consideration, while Charlie is a very different individual than Kenny Pitts, there are similarities that or aspects of Kenny's personality that I would try to tap into for the character. And that I felt some of Kenny's quirky aspects, or some of how he can be comically awkward, like those were, and then all are also very earnest and sincere. Those are things that came from Kenny when I was writing the script. Even more so with Rough Cut, because Fran, Pat, and Susie are very much an homage to these guys. I mean, Susie, who Kenny plays, is kind of based in many ways off of Jason, who can be kind of grumpy. Not that he's got like anger management problems, but he can be kind of curmudgeonly, and is often, you know, mad. I didn't have any sort of a special friendship with any relative of his, but like we can butt heads sometimes. Pat is very much a combination of Kenny and Beard, in terms of trying to maintain it, trying to keep it together, trying to deal with conflicting personalities. And there's really kind of little dabs of everybody in kind of each of the characters. While they might seem sort of archetypal, it really was, writing that was really a love story to the chase, but also a love story to the brothers and sisters who were there, you know, in the middle of it with us. So they influence it whether they mean to or not.
That's a beautiful answer, I think. Okay, well, so then explain to me, and this is for everybody here, because I'm trying to make sure, because I want to get everyone's answers on this here, but I hope I don't leave people hanging out too long with everyone else talking here. But here's what I'm curious about for you guys. You know, with the years of experience you guys have together, and then kind of everyone kind of doing their own thing in separate projects and whatnot. Especially from the very beginning when you guys have started and where things are going now, do you guys feel like that because you have a better understanding, you know what works for you, what doesn't work, or you're starting to realize how you can kind of get a trajectory about what may change along the way from your perspective in the trenches there, that you notice that you have started to appreciate more, that maybe back in the first couple of years you didn't necessarily care for, or probably did understand it was part of the process but hated it, or maybe something you'd liked before in the beginning and now you have a different opinion on the matter now, where you feel like it's maybe not as enjoyable as it was for you before, because now that you have a better understanding and now you have to be handling that responsibility in those respective areas, that maybe it's not it doesn't have the same, you don't have the same sentiment like you used to anymore. So I hope that question makes sense, but I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on how things have changed for you from when you started from where you are with it now.
Yeah, one thing I'll start with that is and this was really painful for me on the last episode that we shot of Rough Cut on 4 that we didn't shoot. Painful or whatever. It was just harder, as we all had been growing and doing things, wanting to be more professional. Rough Cut was still a no pay, no budget project. So we still had no money, and we had all grown in different ways, and we wanted to do things to get paid, but that was a zero budget project. So it was, as a producer on that one, it was really hard to respond to people, especially ones that hadn't been part of the prior episodes too, to have people work and volunteer. And we had such a good festival run with it. That's another thing. We weren't going to go to as many festivals, but Rough Cut 1 was received well at like the first one, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So we went to more festivals. So that's another story in itself. It took made Rough Cut go quite a bit longer, but just asking people to be more volunteer still on Rough Cut 4, that's something that changed, and it was harder for me to ask. Whereas before, hey, would you love to come? It's always been full disclosure. There was never any disrespect. And that's the number one thing, whether you working with money or not, but especially when you don't have money, just is the respect and asking and trying to work with people. But it was just harder then because I don't know, just a new mindset of wanting to be more professional, and then having people come work for free when these are long days, and it's just it was just hard to do.
What about for everyone else? Do you guys have a different perspective on how you guys look at things now when it comes to?
I mean, I think even like kind of what Kenny's talking about, even for personally, it's kind of how I think a lot of us take it now is if we want to approach a project and we want to do something else, we have to figure out how to get paid for it. It's we still love it, we still a passion, but we're all older and we all have a lot of responsibilities. So if like you can't ask people to come do stuff for free, this, and then also hopefully pay ourselves. And that's a big difference than before. Like we never worried about that kind of thing. And now it's kind of like we have to, and just growing industry really is.
Jason, you're cutting out a little bit.
Sorry, am I done? Am I out?
No, you're good. You're back now.
Okay. Yeah, I would piggyback on that too and say that the because the industry is growing and that is changing, people can get paid to go do those things, and it's harder maybe to get volunteers. I mean, they're still around. You can still get locations and that kind of stuff. But I see the day when that's not going to be the case, right? I mean, you can kind of see the writing on the wall there. But I mean, in general, just making any kind of movie or feature length, especially, is hard. Yeah. And when you have no money, it's even harder. And especially if you're trying to make something good. So I think I heard M. Night say something to the effect of, if you can do anything else, do that rather than make a movie. If you don't have to make this movie, don't do it, because it's difficult. I'm not gonna butcher the name.
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
Yeah. I was just getting my M. Night. Just making
sure. Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. So I mean, I think that part of it's just like, it's hard, and it's certainly tested all of us and all of our friendships and our family relations and just everything. So in the end, though, I mean, you look back at what you've done and what you've accomplished and what you're attached to, and you kind of put your fingerprint on it and say, hey, I did that. I was part of that. And I think that's something that not a lot of people get, especially when you get older. And I just turned 49 this year, and I don't know a lot of 49-year-old people that can say they've done the things that I've done. So,
true. Did you guys ever feel like quitting at any point? When you guys were, I know it sounds like a silly question, but I'm actually genuinely curious because, because I'm hoping you guys don't mind bringing him up here, but I've talked to Brett Ben before, and when I had asked him about, his passion for making films and so on, he tells me that he feels like quitting every single day, but he's not doing, the work of making films because of the fame and glory. He's doing it because he likes the results. He loves to see the final results of everything they put into it, and then see how everything turned out. And not necessarily to looking to please. I wouldn't say that. Maybe it's not the best way how he described it, because my memory's a little vague now. But essentially, he was just trying to say that he's not doing it for the reasons of like looking for attention. He's doing it because he loves what the result of what he sees from all the hard work that him and his team have put into that production. But for you guys though, do you guys have somewhat that kind of same sentiment, or do you guys really do love what you do so much that, you know, the hardship is worth it for you guys to deal with what you guys are doing and go through, you know, some of the sacrifices you have to make in order for you to get the work done, especially when you're not getting paid for? Because that's another thing too that you guys have, that Adam and now you guys have kind of confirmed for me, that there's literally no money going into this here at all, and you're really doing it at your own free will and with everyone else's free time. And then we'll get into Rough Cut in a bit here, but when you look at the show of what a Rough Cut here, it literally is quality stuff. So, you know, I'm kind of blown away that there was no money into this here, and it was just all a matter of people helping each other out, and to turn out as well as it does. Quite frankly, I don't necessarily look at that as someone who's going to look and make a film and say, well, I hate what I do here, but I'm just going to do it because I just want to see how it turns out. I feel like there's a lot more behind it from what I'm discussing with you guys. So I'm not sure if you guys have anything to add to that, or share a different perspective from how you guys feel about when you guys are making productions of any sort.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we've all thought about quitting at one point. I mean, I can say just anecdotally that, like, when we finished Charlie and you know, we went all over the place with it at festivals. It had a great festival run, and had a lot of fun showing it. But it was kind of like when we got done with that, and sort of increasingly as time went on, you know, you're kind of like, well, is this it? Is this what we did all this work for? And I know I was done. I mean, I was drained, and it had strained my marriage. And I mean, it's hard being a film widow, man. And I wrote a letter to I think I probably got a little bit inebriated one night, and I wrote a letter to myself basically saying, you're not going to make it and all the reasons why. And I mean, I wrote it, and it was like a breakup letter from, I don't even think I was breaking up with filmmaking. It was basically filmmaking kicking me out of bed. And then I sobered up, and I got, you know, the chip back on my shoulder. And I used a lot of that, what I wrote in the letter, and this is true, for the Rough Cut episode 1, part of the Shane Joseph speech, where he's telling people, you're from Oklahoma, you're not going to make it, nobody cares, you're too old, you're not talented. And I mean, that was straight, I was lifting off of that really brutal letter I wrote to myself. So man, absolutely, you know. And I don't know, you guys, what about y'all?
I think going back to something I said a little bit ago, we not wanting to do it the same way with the growing, and tying that into that last episode of Rough Cut. I think all those growing pains of changes, it makes you question every project, almost like at, you know, middle of the shoot is different than the end of the shoot. On a shoot day, you're like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna go home now, and then that's a different mentality from the beginning of the day when you're caffeinated and full of excitement. It's kind of like that way in your overall path too. But yeah, it's you know, I think Bentman's right. It's just you do question a lot if what, you know, what are you doing? Why are you continuing this the way you're doing it? But yeah, I feel that. But
you love the filmmaking process, or the production of working those productions more so than you would actually hate it. Is that kind of a fair thing to say?
Yeah,
Kenny, you're depressed. You're bumming us all out, man.
Oh, I didn't even mean that. But yeah, no. Yeah, it's like I've thought this for a while, and Adam has compared it to sports, and I felt this for a while. Like, you know, you go into practice, and it's tough all the way through, but you're happy when it's done. You're happy to see that final product. And giving these guys credit too, it's like it's really cool to see people react to the end product. And thank you for there's a compliment in there, and thank you so much for what you're saying about our final products and Rough Cut, and working with these guys too. There's a synergy even in its disagreement and dissonance. With Adam being open on the stuff that he writes and directs, like we talked about, and being open and wanting to, like with the characters, shaping them around the people they are, having that dissonance. Well, that's a word I used on word of the day, I guess. But having those disagreements really helps a final product come out too. So
well,
yeah.
And there has been part of how you, I think you deal with that is by evolving. Mm-hmm. If you're starting to have trouble with it, or you're having trouble getting up in the morning, figuring out what your obstacle is, and then removing it or getting around it. And I mean, Rough Cut was us. I think we were all in on it together because we knew this was our story as filmmakers, and we knew that it was the story of dream chasers. It was underdogs, and so even the audience response to it was so unique and special and personal, and people were really like getting out of it what we wanted them to. And I think it felt like, when I was talking about that connection, I don't want to speak for these guys, but I did feel like they were getting to exercise some of their demons and display some of what we all go through with the process. And then Play It Loud is Beard's baby, and we're very thankful to Beard for that. And that was kind of building off of that thing too, because now we're kind of talking about musicians and their journey, but we're also talking about our journey as artists and the similarities that people who have passion and pursuits and sacrifices, things that we have in common, which in today's time, finding places where we can agree and understand and empathize. I mean, hey man, I'm all for that as much as we can get it. And so I think part of that is with the last few projects, being able to do that. And I mean, Rough Cut's a couple of years old at this point. So Play It Loud reflects who we are artistically, in terms of, if you look at what Jason and his team are able to do, it's a great team, shooters, and Jace edits them, and Beards basically serves as the executive producer, but kind of takes it sort of a directorial position. Kenny produces. I mean, like, you can see our evolution, and I think that's how we dealt with some of those hard times, is like growing past them. And that's the key, I think, is to once you start getting stagnant, that's when dreams go to die, stagnant or comfortable.
Mm. It's a brutal truth.
I'll add on that real quick, that I think the other part of that, there are times when being on set is hard, and when you're tired and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and all that kind of stuff. But in general, 90+% of the time, set days are great. I mean, we get in, we work, we all work hard, we work well together. We've got that shorthand of the decade that we've been together doing this, and you get it done. And it's sort of the in-between times, I think, sometimes is when it gets tough, when things aren't happening, or they're not happening the way somebody maybe wants them to happen, or it's just the part of producing stuff that offset is when it kind of gets tough sometimes, having to explain why you spent all that time on set to your family, that kind of business. But during set times, that's kind of
home away from home for you guys.
Yeah, that's kind of like the performance. We always had this. I always talk about, it's like we're in a band, but we never get out of the bus. And so
I love that analogy. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So our performance and the art of what we do is on set. Jason, obviously, he's doing stuff after the fact that brings it all home, but that's where we get to perform, really, is there on set. So
how about for yourself, Jason? Any perspective on that for yourself?
No, I'm wondering.
Jace, how many times have you quit?
Man,
twice today.
Honestly, Charlie was supposed to be the last thing I was doing. Actually, A Beautiful Day was. I was done with A Beautiful Day. He talked me into doing Charlie, and I said, because I was planning on leaving, I was going to move, and I said I'd stay around for Charlie, and I met my wife, and then I stayed for good.
Nice.
I mean, you met her because we cast her, so you're welcome.
Yeah.
Hey,
Maybe
I met my
it's
wife.
a big ploy to make me not go nowhere.
Yeah. We're gonna have to get Jason married and some roots thrown down.
I met my wife at Dead Center.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
You're welcome for that, Beard.
Yeah.
Well, so let's actually get into Rough Cut then, because this was actually more or less kind of the catalyst that really more or less got the ball rolling for myself and Adam, and then having you guys kind of be brought into this whole convo here. Because when as I said earlier in the more or less the intro of this show here, that when I saw the first episode, and quite frankly, the first thing that crossed my mind before I even saw the show was that is this going to be any good? That was the first thing that crossed my mind.
How
not
dare
knowing
you,
us.
sir?
So,
fair enough.
well, I was it crossed my mind to say that here because the reason for that, and there's a reason why I'm leading to this here, is because when I saw 90 Feet from Home with you, Adam, I loved what you had done in that film. Like that film for me, I think is one of Brett's best films he's directed, but a lot of it has to do with everyone else making that film as good as it turned out. But there was something about your performance in that film that in a lot of ways I felt like it was a little bit of yourself in that role, that I felt like that if you do that with this film, I have a feeling you're going to do that with everything else that you will be working on. But I was just curious to see, will can it still be consistent? That's kind of where I was kind of getting with that here. So when I saw the first episode of Rough Cut, I was instantly hooked. But believe it or not, the one scene that really made me pay attention to the show and give me a different perspective on how you guys were, as far as the narrative was concerned, was the Shane Joseph scene. That scene for me was, I think, the reality of what filmmakers go through and what people say to filmmakers who are trying to more or less make it in the business. But seeing you guys lead up to that particular conference, if you will, where Shane was pretty much just badgering everybody about how they sucked and that they should quit because they're never going to make it, because you're going to want to make a film from Oklahoma. No one's going to care who you guys are, because you're not with the big leagues. You're not with the big wigs out in Hollywood and New York or whatever the case may be. And when I saw that first episode, I actually went back to watch it again because I had a whole new set of lenses that I was looking at it now, because they started making more sense to me how the story was being carried on leading up to that point. And then I ended up watching episode 2, which, then we'll get into a little bit here. But that particular scene, as I said before, I think it's like I even timed it too, because I just want to see like how long it went for. It was like 23 minutes. But I remember, I had a lot of time on my hands at that moment. But
no, I'm sorry you had to sit there for that. That's
no, I loved it though. That's why I went back to go watch it. But the reason I went back to watch it again was because it dawned on me too that the things that I was watching and how things were being laid out and getting introduced to the characters, getting the bit of the backstory, the expositions about who they are as individuals, and then having so many different storylines cross each other's path, but never felt convoluted. And I'm being honest when I say that, but that particular scene spoke to me because I remember thinking, if this was an actual network television show, whether it be on a streaming platform like Amazon, Netflix, whatever the case may be, I know for a fact that there will probably be some bigwig producers out there who may say, yeah, we may want to trim this down to maybe 5 minutes rather than the full 23 minutes. That's the reason why I timed it, because there's so much that character says, and you have a lot of these scenes that are intercut in between that monologue there, where you're having the characters having these reactionary moments about what they're going through, and then him discussing about how these filmmakers who want to make in the ministry are never going to make because they're comfortable at home, etc. Then you see Sue at home eating cereal or whatever he was doing at that time and at the kitchen table. But it really spoke to me about how this couldn't have not been told under the Hollywood system, if you will. And I felt like that was, for me, the turning point. Okay, now I see what you're going for, because if this is a story that you wanted to tell, you guys definitely told it in an effective way. But what appealed to me as well is because there was an authenticity about those scenes that probably wouldn't have worked well in more or less mainstream. Just because I wouldn't say because of the language, but the use of the language, considering the context of why they were used in the first place. considering now today's climate, which I understand, and I'm not against it, but I understand how things might be perceived in a certain way where you can't use that sort of vernacular anymore. You have to use it a different way, but that's how people talk. And under those circumstances, it is effective because it makes sense for why some guy from Hollywood would talk to some people from Oklahoma, and he may think he's above them just because he's been through that system and he knows more than they do, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And in a lot of ways, he's right, but he's an asshole as a result of that. But everyone else just kind of takes his word for it because, hey, he's from Hollywood, so he knows what he's talking about. So there's a lot of like that preconceived notion that is like that everywhere across the country, where people who just look at it from afar but don't really know the ins and outs of it. And for you guys to be able to do that from Oklahoma and commentate on that with that monologue, I thought was brilliant, in my opinion. And I really am being honest when I say that. So I hope you don't mind me going long-winded with that here, but that to me was that turning point for me to understand what you guys as storytellers, as the production team, were all about. Because once I saw that, then everything else was just more or less icing on the cake. And I can go on for hours about what it is I loved about it here too. But I understand, from what you described, Adam, about your how that came to be and how that was the more or less the inspiration for that scene. But everything else surrounding that, I think if it wasn't for that scene, I'm not sure if I would have had that same impact, and my perception would have changed if I hadn't seen that full 20-minute scene play itself out the way that it did, because it does go on for a while, but it's so captivating that because it's done so well in terms of the technical aspects of it, the acting and all those other areas in that particular episode, that I don't know if I would have had the same sentiments. And I'm being honest when I say that too, because there was just so much you had going for. It was a risk, but I think the risk was worth, in this case, as you said before, the juice was worth the squeeze. So I'm hoping that, if you guys can share your insight about how everything came to be for that show, if you had any sort of a differences of opinion about how Adam had a way to go about going to telling the story, or if you guys were on board and then having to infiltrate your ideas to kind of flesh the story out a little bit more for it to be turning out the way that it did. So if anyone wants to take up on that here.
Well, I want to jump in real quick because I appreciate all the kind words you've said. Feel free to talk like that for the rest of our conversation. I'm all here for it. Pete Hounslow played Shane Joseph. He was the actor that got cast in that role. He absolutely killed it. I still don't think he ever won an award at any of the festivals we played at, and it's a travesty because I just think he was so profoundly unlikable. And but the reason he was so important is a hero is only as good as its villain, or his or her villain, or their villain, I guess. And we needed that villain. I mean, that we needed something to get the audience behind our less than heroes. And what we needed was some sort of a rallying point for the audience to get behind them and say, okay, we want these guys we want to see them shove this in his face. And that's he represents inevitability, because I don't think anything he said is all that wrong. A lot of it is true. It's just said in a very despicable way, or a very cynical way, maybe. So yeah, that his character is what launched the whole show. I mean, like, we've seen the drunk writer guy, and we've seen the sad guy whose wife has left him, and we've seen sort of, the comically angry fellow. So those dynamics, as it goes on, I think those characters flesh out and become more complicated and more interesting. But certainly that first episode, we're sort of just showing, kind of a shallow take on any movie you see about filmmaking. You're going to have the guy who's the writer who's drunk, or the director who's unlikable, or whatever. We needed a really solid villain, and that was what that character represented.
I agree with you on that too. But for any of you guys out there, do you guys have a take on, from what I was pointing out there, about that you guys have had some opinions about how you wanted all to go about and telling the story here, for at least in this case, at least for the first episode?
Adam had it. I thought it was really well written. Shane Joseph. I always say, even with him, like whatever you follow with him, if he makes you want to quit or he makes you want to keep going, either way is the right answer. I always like that response to him. But as far as the rest of it, it's all hard real life, and I think it's. I don't know if we changed any of the structure from the original order and everything like that as far as how it went. We've all had different relations and different reactions to the things that are happening to these people, and so I think we were all on board with it. Not trying to speak for Jason and Chad, but it was a culmination of a lot of that synergy and dissonance that we've used in the past, I think. And it, very much like Jeff Daniels in on the show Sorkin show, it's like it was well done like that, I think.
Newsroom is what you're talking about.
You've kind of joked a little bit about the girth of the productions that we produce. Initially, Rough Cut was supposed to be like short, 15 minutes, I think, is what we discussed in the beginning.
Yeah, they were,
because it was yeah, it was like, let's do something short, sweet, and get it done. And then Adam shows up with 90 pages of script, and
thank you guys for still being my friends.
I mean, it turns out, and you're right that there's no way we could have that would have been a network television kind of a deal, especially with those scenes being longer, and but it wouldn't have worked any other way, really, because Shane Joseph is not wrong. I think he's right mostly, I think, is the line that Pat has when he walks out the door after.
Yeah.
And that's it's true. So if you're ever going to make a statement and leave it, and the fact that you've come along now 2 or 3, 4 years after, and we really never did anything with it other than put it on YouTube, and you found your way to it, I think it's testament to the quality of it in terms of, it does have something to say.
Yeah, I agree. How about for you, Jason? Anything that you have a perspective on that?
No, I mean, I agree. Like, it was, it's where it ended up being is funny, its own funny story, because we were just burnt out. A lot of us were burnt out from Charlie, trying to figure out what we wanted to do next, and the concept of being like, hey, let's do some short little episodes, and then maybe we'll figure out what we really want to do. And then it actually became, Adam showed up with a story that we loved, and it became what we did for the next 4 years. So it's a crazy story in itself, and I mean, it ended up being done really well, and people are still finding it, and that's pretty cool.
I'm sorry, you want to say, Chad?
Well, just I mean, in terms of there's a good portion of that in all of our performances that's not acting.
Yeah,
if that makes
agree
sense.
with you.
I mean, it's not. I mean, there's a scene in 3, or is it 4? It might be 4. I guess it's 4, which is where it is. But I got actually emotional at his line is, what's the line when you're walking out of the theater, Adam? Are we done?
Yeah. Is this it?
Is this it? And at that time, it could have been, so I got literally emotional, like, so there are definite periods in that project that it's not acting. It's real relationships happening on screen.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing I want to do here about the show, because there's so much that I definitely want to get into, but I just know we're not gonna have all the time in the world to do this here. But so I hope you guys are okay with me just kind of like more or less highlighting a few things about each episode that I've taken away from here that I'm hoping you guys can fill in the gaps and commentating about those particular experiences from how everything turned out the way that it did. But as far as the second episode, 2 things that stick out for me in that episode is, and then leading to episode 3, which is what I really want to get into next. But with episode 2, where your character, Chad, Pat, is talking to the investor, and then you have the conversation with his wife. that was, in my opinion, one of the most pivotal scenes in the show, in that particular episode, because um, it was kind of obvious, and it's obviously a little heightened it's a heightened reality of what normally would go in investors meetings and this and that for trying to get money for a film or a show, whatever you're trying to do. But there is a reality about that particular conversation that occurs, that your character, in my opinion, I think a lot of people should take a note from here, because there's a way that you carried yourself where you weren't bullshitting the investor about what it is you do, what you're looking for, and so on and so forth, that I think a lot of people may tend to do just because they're panicking, they don't know any better, and they just think they want to say things that the other person wants to hear, rather than just being upfront about where they stand as far as what they need and why they need it. But at the same time, the compromises that were made that would also effectively possibly strain the relationship of the producing partners, the directors, and so on. In this case, with I'm terrible with names when it comes to no, not Fran. The wife, Letitia, is that her name?
Latrice.
Latrice, thank you. Sorry, I can't Letitia. Sorry, Latrice. So, her wanting to be part of the film, and there's a reason I'm bringing her up here now, because this leads into episode 3, which I want to get into in a little bit. But her wanting to be in the film industry, to act and so on, that was a catch, that if you want the $10,000 for this film, she's gonna have to have a part of the movie. This is the part that she wants, and he's pretty upfront about what it is that he didn't care for about the production, because that's not his cup of tea. But the fact that he loves his wife and he knows what his wife is passionate about, he's willing to cough up the cash for her, and that was the only reason why you guys have that opportunity to get the film made, because one person showed interest, and that was all that you needed. But there was a catch that was involved with making the film. And that's, I think, is a reality of what a lot of filmmakers go through, that they have to understand about what it is they have to compromise. If we have to be dealing with this, how would we actually deal with that? In this case, we all knew where Fran stood, at least I did, especially when watching as the show progresses from there. So that particular conversation between Patrick and Pat and the investor and his wife, I was curious if that was something you guys had real life experiences with, and if so, or if you maybe have heard it from somebody else that had shared those stories, where you realize this is juicy stuff right here that we can put into the show that would help flesh out the story to where I needed to get to that final part of the episode. So I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, starting with you, Adam, about what it was that helped get the idea of putting that scene down, because again, that's a really pivotal scene, in my opinion, that I think a lot of filmmakers can actually learn from if they have never had any understanding of how that stuff works.
Well, I think the first lesson of filmmaking, is what they tackle in episode 1, which is, you're going to fail. Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, do you want to defy those odds?
Right.
And then episode 2 takes up with the next part of that challenge, which is, okay, what are you willing to compromise to get it? And so that's when that sort of sets in, and that's compromise is your greatest enemy. I mean, okay, yeah, we want to go make something for free. Well, what are you going to lose for that? What are you not going to have access to? Equipment, people, whatever, time. In this case, I mean, like that dates it pretty well. It probably should be like 50 grand or 75 grand or something, something that shows how low end they are, but it's actually, 10 grand, that's a couple of car washes, I guess, these days. But like, there are lots of people, and I have no malice. I love it. I mean, there are actors who are like, hey, big time actors do it. I'll come in and executive produce, and I'm going to bring my name and swagger and power and reach, because I want to do this vanity project, or this project that really means something to me, or whatever. So it happens all the way up to the top. Anytime you see a big time actor in a small time movie, that's a story they want to get told. And it happens all the way down, where people might say, hey, I'm an actor and I got money and I want to act in something that's quality. And I actually have no problem with that at all. Now, I've got a problem with it if they're a bad actor. I mean, that sucks. And in the case of this, because she's horrible, Latrice is a horrible actress. Julia Curry not, but Latrice is. But yeah, I thought it was the rawest form of compromise that I could find, that Pat would find himself in, that he has to make a big boy decision, that it's easy to be the Fran character and be the whole, I'm high and mighty and noble and pure, and it's all about story, and it's all about these characters, and how dare you blemish this pure thing from my heart with a mercenary actress. But I mean, do you want to get the movie made? Because you're going to have to lose something.
Yeah.
And that's the battle I wanted those two characters to have.
I think the 10 grand actually ends up, we might have had that conversation early on. Even I think I had maybe said something like 10 grand. I mean, yeah, it's a couple of car washes.
Yeah.
But looking back now, it's almost like, it doesn't matter what the level of
right
10 grand, 10 million. I mean, that situation spans all of it. So for it to be,
I wish I had been intelligent enough to do that intentionally. You know what I mean? And just be like, it's just the point of it, but I wasn't.
So let me ask you guys about that respect there, because with this production here that you guys had worked on, you guys have confirmed that there was really no money involved with it here. So I'm kind of going off the topic here, but how was it difficult for you guys to find actors and people to work on the production, knowing that there was nothing for them in terms of monetary rewards or whatever the case may be, but purely just for the experience? Because I understand that there are people who want the experience and are willing to do what it takes to get the job done, to showcase their skill level as well. But even if you came across somebody that was just as excited to do it, and then when you broke the news that, but there's not going to be any funds as far as us paying you for this is concerned, because we don't have the money to pay you guys, but you will have the experience and you will have credit for a project that will be seen by, hopefully, in some capacity, to an audience, whether it be in a festival run or maybe it might be released online. But we're going to find a way to get this released out there, but you will be credited for having done the following. So was there a little bit of a struggle having to get that pulled off here to get this done?
I mean, I don't think so. I think that, because one, nobody worked, and I don't want this to sound ugly, but nobody worked harder or longer than we did. So we were the first ones there. We were the last ones to leave. So it wasn't as though we're like, hey, you guys pick up all this trash. We're out of here. We're at the bar. So it was very much, we're gonna do this. Do you want to come along with us and have a great, and part of it was, do you want to have a great time? Because it is a great time on set. There is a lot of love, and there is a lot of it's a fun time. It's a fun time to be had. Because more often than not, we get done shooting and we're at somebody's house drinking cold pops, watching dailies, and laughing. And it was also very, very, very small community. So we had Jason Garner and Marcy, who played Omaha, and her husband John, who was in it and also crewed. It was a very small collective of people. And then our actors, while I value their time, and they certainly gave it, they're coming in for a day or two for the most part. They're shooting in a day or two. We're the ones that were kind of going all the way through. That doesn't, not to diminish anybody's effort, but I don't think what we were doing was unfair at all. And I think because we were so upfront, and then a lot of times they had either worked with us before. Julia, who played Latrice, was in Charlie Christmas. She played Grace. Yeah. We had a lot of familiar faces there. So a lot of it was just, were people that were just believed in what we were doing, believed the story that we were telling, and were cool to be a part of it. Now, like in episode 4, it was a bigger cast. There was a lot more going on. And I think we started showing, I think some of our limitations started showing there more than some of the others because of the bigger sets and the more people. So when we're just 3 people at a swimming pool, I think we were able to pull that off with, minimal help. Once we started getting bigger, I think it became more difficult to manage. That's my take on it.
And back to what you said about like approaching people and even mentioning like for experience. That's a good question. I never thought about that before, but I don't think we've ever, I don't want to say bullshitted anybody with, hey, the experience, because that's funny in a lot of memes and a lot of entertainment and
doesn't pay the bills.
But we've never really approached anybody for like hey, you'll do it for experience, you'll do it for food, or would you do it for experience, would you do it for food, or you'll get an IMDb credit, because we knew those were things that they should. It's like a Mexican restaurant saying, "Hey, free chips and salsa" on their billboard. Well, that's what they should have. You know, to advertise, to me, to advertise that you do it for the experience or do it for credit is something they already. It goes without saying. So
Right.
we've never really approached it asking them for that. But after Charlie, especially when we started Rough Cut, a lot of people, it wasn't hard to answer that specific question of finding people to want to work on it. We were starting to get a cool reputation, as small as that may be, in regional festival circuits in Oklahoma and a little bit beyond. But we had people that wanted to work with us and that were respectful. Going back to with what some of what they said. After we would shoot and we would watch dailies at somebody's house, the people that were involved always want to stick around and help out even a little bit more than just what they did. So we built an even bigger community, an extended family of Outsiders Productions with every project we did, also including Rough Cut. So it was it wasn't hard to get a lot of people. Now, maybe if we were trying to find the right role, we would think just a little bit extra harder to try to find the right person, but we always found the right person.
Yeah.
I think we probably off-put more people with the language than we did with the lack of money. I mean, I think when we did have an audition, I think we were more likely to lose people that didn't want to, you know, say some of the words that were written down than the lack of paycheck.
Jason, for yourself, because you were, because I know you worked on the production side of it here too. Did you, from that experience, or did you have any perception about how you may want to change? Because I don't recall ever you being in front of the camera. So was there any point that there may have been an opportunity for you to be able to do something in front of the camera for you to be able to kind of fill in the cast, if you will, for certain things that may require more people, where or you just prefer to stick with that in the behind the scenes aspect of it here? Because I'll be honest with you, you kind of strike me as a person that would rather be behind the scenes than you would be in front of the camera, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't do that. I don't do it in front of the camera. I stay where I like to be. Now, I'm not comfortable doing the other stuff. I get asked occasionally, and the answer is, if I can swing it, usually no. unless it's absolutely needed. But yeah, I am much more comfortable behind the camera for sure.
Jason did play a cop in Charlie Christmas, but he was down to a mustache. He played Charlie's brother's partner. That's kind of giving him the run at the police station.
A mustache and a few pounds ago.
That wasn't
and had a mustache.
That wasn't Tom Selleck. That was Jason Alexander.
Interesting.
Longer hair too.
And less gray. Less gray too. Yeah. There's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
So then tell me for yourself in this case, because I actually want to get your perspective on here, because when you as the show started to progress and becoming much more longer than the initial thought process was going to be for, and because it was supposed to be a short, was there at any point any hesitation for you? Because you mentioned before that you kind of wanted to quit, and I think you did touch upon it before, if I recall correctly. But as it started to continue on from there and starting getting bigger and bigger, and the days becoming longer and longer as a result of having to, fill out the story, did you feel that, your perception of wanting to quit change along the way because of maybe the positive experience you're getting from that? Or was it just par for the course that you thought, I'm just going to do it. These are my friends and I'm just going to help out. But after this year, I'm going to do something else. It was kind of want to hear your perspective on how you thought that was how that was like for you during that production.
No, once Rough Cut rolled around, there was no level of quit. I was just ready to move before things picked up with Charlie. And then after that, it was all in. As far as the length goes, the initial concept was short, but once Adam presented the scripts and we knew what they were and what's needed to make it happen, we would figure that out going forward. So there's no surprises after going into the production. There's no surprises. The surprises come in like the very, very pre stages of it is when the surprise being like, oh, look, it's longer. And it's like, okay, cool. So now let's figure out how we do this. And then once we figure it out, I mean, everybody's on board and we're all in. And then we were very prepared. And I mean, there's no surprises after that point. The surprise is like stage one.
Well, you know, here's another thing I wanted to give you guys prop for on the show, because I said it before as well too, I believe, where, you know, when I find out that you know, there was virtually no money going into this here, and for it to turn out as well as it does, as well as it meant to say, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little surprised that I really haven't heard about this before, because I was curious that, you know, with the attention you guys were getting for how Rough Cut had turned out, because it sounds like to me you guys were getting a lot of positive word of mouth. Was there any sort of indication from guys in maybe I don't know if it's the best way to ask this, but, you know, if you were getting some people who were outside of the Oklahoma film industry that were calling in you guys, hey, we saw this the show that you guys had done at this particular festival, we really like what you have done. We think we may have an idea how we could probably get this to a much wider audience there. Was there any sort of potential talks about taking the story to another level outside of the festival circuit, where you guys will be able to showcase on a wider platform?
That hurts.
No, I mean,
I think
not like that. Well, I would say, you know, obviously Adam has gone on and used some of that momentum to do some of the things that he's done. I mean, it's part of his reel when people want what he's acting in and what he's doing next and who he is, just like how you found him. But for somebody that nobody's that I'm aware of has approached us directly and said, hey, you know, let's benefactor this thing, or let's try to ramp it up to the next level. It's just not the way it works, you know. Yeah. I mean,
if so, I've got great ideas for season 2.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and just any of it, it's the same thing with Rough Cut. I mean, with Play It Loud, it's like people watch that and like, oh, that should be on Netflix. Well, Netflix hasn't called, and you can't really just call Netflix, you know, and tell them, hey, I've got this project. I mean, there's other things that we could probably do with it. That's a different conversation, but nobody's beating down our door necessarily saying, oh, you know, we're going to give you money to do those things as of yet.
Well, and that's another thing too, that you know, that's one of the reasons why I love the show Rough Cut, because that's I guess you know, if you had asked if you and I, if all of us here had this conversation with me, I would say maybe more than 5 years ago, I think I would have had a different perception about, well, you know, when are you going to get into collar, because I didn't really understand the business side of it, and how, you know, how difficult it can be, even if you make great quality. Because I've seen a lot of films out there that are phenomenal, and I'm wondering how come these writers, directors, and actors are not necessarily getting the attention that would grant them these opportunities for them to work on other projects that would be able to showcase on a much wider platform, not necessarily for the fame and glory, but really more about the opportunities that would come with showcasing their skill level in whatever capacity they're working in. And, you know, and I know it was maybe an unfair question to ask, and I hope I didn't insult you guys by asking that here, but
you did.
I apologize.
But I was going to use the Shane Joseph line, like, you got to the right D.
But I'm wondering though, because, you know, I understand that, you know, in order for you to be able to get to a certain position or a certain level of the industry, that, you know, a lot of it is politics. That part I do understand. And I would also understand too that some people will probably say the same thing that Shane Joseph would say, that, well, you guys are in Oklahoma, of course you're not going to get anywhere with that. I understand that perspective as well too. But again, considering that, you know, the window of opportunity to be able to showcase this this show, which I know takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work to be able to promote it out there, because I know that's very consuming too. And believe me, I understand, you know, social media can only go so far, but was there ever a time where you guys thought about we have something really, really good and we really need to go take this to another level by bringing more awareness to this subject? Has that ever crossed your mind about taking that to try to promote it and market it to be able to hopefully garner some attention, to give you guys the opportunity to work on things that you guys have been wanting to work on, but know that you would need some assistance in that regard to be able to pull off those productions you're hoping to pull off here? I mean, I hope that's a fair question. I mean, a better question to ask than what I asked previously.
No, man, I'm just giving you the business. That was a great question, and there, I appreciate all your research. You know, I think part of it was Kenny, I think, alluded to this earlier. We did the first episode, and we were planning on jumping right into the next one. And then what happened is we thought, well, let's submit this into a couple of film festivals to try to get a little bit of attention, get a little bit of that buzz, spend a little bit of time in a dark bar somewhere, have some laughs, sit back and enjoy it, and then get back to work. But then what happened is the first ones we started playing around, and it was getting some nice buzz. And we didn't do a wide net like we did with Charlie, but that time, you don't have so much time when you're working a full-time job. You got wife, you got kids, you got stuff to do. So our shooting time got eaten up with our festival time. So then that took us longer to get the second one going. And then the second one, we entered it into just a couple of festivals because it's not standalone. It requires the first one. So that didn't take as much time, but then that just kind of put us off schedule. And so everything took longer than we intended. And then we shot the fourth one. And for me, some of the compromises that we had to make made editing it to the satisfaction of a finale very difficult. So we're still in the middle of doing that, and it's probably my biggest failure as a filmmaker, the fact that we haven't put that out yet. But it's you know, I want to see how long it took Zack Snyder to put out Justice League, and I will come out like a day before that. And then I think, because I think our intent was, this is a story, this is a four-part piece, and then at that point try to promote it, and that's yet to be determined once we get that episode finished. And I think if you enjoyed the first three, I think you'll love the fourth. I think all the things that there are there to love about the first three, the fourth brings it home in a way that's tragic and beautiful and funny and true. And so maybe once we've got that fourth one done, which we're going to have this year, then that's when we could say, okay, well, here's this piece, here's this story. Because up to now, anything we'd be putting out, at least to the public, would be incomplete. I mean, we've got it on YouTube for somebody to find, but we're not promoting it. And I'm so shocked and impressed and glad that you found it. So I think that's kind of waiting on the fourth, sort of the capstone of the first season, perhaps the series, probably the series. But it needs that ending.
I hope
we're also all pretty
soon,
terrible politicians. We are. I mean, that's the name Outsiders is not a misnomer. I mean, that's kind of that we're just we don't do that. It's not like I'm a marketing professional. I mean, that's what I do for a living. So it's not as much about marketing takes money if you're going to do it the right way and do it well, but then it's the relationships that you have to make and the networking and all that other stuff that you got to do. And when you're not doing it full time and you're trying to get it done when you can get it done, that's pretty hard. Yeah. So it partially, I think, that's how Play It Loud came about, was a way for us to have that funded and to be able to make something with some money and to maybe make some of those connections. And of course, that's kind of taken on a life of its own. But we're in a lot of ways just figuring it out as we go, as we always have. We didn't go to school for this.
Yeah.
Well,
we did over the last 12, 13, 15 years, but it's all been,
School
just doing
hard knocks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Beard attended Bethel High School in Potawatomi County, Oklahoma, and I'm not sure that even qualifies as a school in itself.
Hey, come on now, Dale.
Well, so okay, so here's what I wanted to lead into with episode 3, because I do want to get into Play It Loud a bit here, because there's something about episode 3 that I love. I love the intro of that episode, which I do want to touch upon here, but what I really want to highlight is Julia Curry. That's her name, correct? Who plays
Latrice.
Yeah. So this character, in my opinion, was in a lot of ways, I think, is kind of like an amalgamation of, I hate to say it like this, but I guess for lack of a better way, saying I don't know any way to get across here, but kind of like the wannabe actors, the actors that want to make it, that want to do this because they have a passion for it. But in her position, she's in a place where she can do it if the right opportunities were to come. And in this case, there's a production team that wants to get a film done, and they need something from her. And she happened to come across something that they've done in the past, and showed interest and was willing to talk with them so long as she has something that she can get out of it, which is a role. The scene that I'm referring to is what happens at the very end. I hope you guys don't mind me getting to this here, because it's kind of more or less a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it. But I figured the show is good enough, regardless, that people should check it out because the quality is that great. So that particular scene between Fran and Latrice here, there's a part of me that picks up on actors that have wanted to pursue their passion, but were never able to do it for one reason or another. But in that particular case, for this character, I think she kind of reminds me of a person that has been looked at a certain way because of how she looks and who she's been married to and who she is as a person and so on and so forth, because she kind of presents herself that way, that no one really takes her seriously unless they need something from her. And then as a result of that, she's developed thick skin where she's able to take the beating, but then give a good beating back, especially in this case for the character Fran, because of the type of person that he is, being a very fragile person to a degree. But that particular character to me is what I believe, I don't know if it's the best way of saying it, is what every actor should be, which is they should have thick skin, because this is a very rough business. Even though the person that's needing your money is going to be just as harsh with you as everyone else is that didn't need your money, but this person is willing to throw away a great opportunity with the compromises that are presented, of course. But this actor has shown something that I believe that it was important for every actor to have, is thick skin. So I'm not sure who this character was meant to be inspired from, or if it's just, again, an amalgamation of different actors that you've come across that you just kind of infuse to this one person to kind of tell this that particular narrative in the show there. And the reason why it's important for me to highlight this is because, again, this is a side of the industry where people have to understand that no one's going to give a shit who you are, and they don't care whose feelings they hurt along the way. Yeah. Even if you are a beautiful person with a lot of resources available that you are able to present to them, but you're going to be torn apart just as much as anybody else will if you give them the opportunity to do that. In this case, she didn't let Fran do that in this case. So I was hoping, again, that if in this case for you, Adam, if you were able to commentate on that, but also to get everyone else's perspective on that particular side of the story, because I wonder if you guys have some way that you guys could relate to that, or maybe you may even learn from that upon reading the script the first time around, that you may have maybe learned something about yourselves in reading it and then having it shot and having to see it as it plays out in the final cut.
Well, that character, yeah, that's really interesting, man. That's a very interesting point, that anybody saw anything good about her. And how dare you say that Fran's vulnerable or fragile, I think is the word you used. I'm very angry about that. We'll discuss that later. I think that, I mean, it's true. I mean, and that's a lesson that I think people that go, and I'm a pretty sensitive cat. I mean, I get my feelings hurt with the wind blowing too hard. Like it does require thick skin, and it does require a certain level, I hate to say it, but of cynicism, and if you don't do it intentionally, then you'll develop the scar tissue eventually. And then either you quit or you keep, pushing through. And that's an interesting point about her, because I don't have any animosity to people who produce films to get acting roles. I would do it. I have zero problem with that at all. There's no different than me writing scripts so that I can have parts. They're fast forwarding through the writing part and they're getting a role in another way. Like, what do you have to bring to the table? Oh, okay, you can do this. Cool. Well, then come help us. Especially if they're good actors. And I know lots of good actors who will fund movies to get roles. I think it's awesome. We need that. In fact, if you're one of those people, contact us. Let's talk. Let's make a movie together. I'm looking for all the Latrices I can find now. But at the time, yeah, I think there's a big part. I think there's a big part of Rough Cut that is about the struggles, and the characters represent those things. I think Pat is very much, hey, this is how, there's lots of talented people who play guitar, and they play guitar in the garage. You've got to get out and do something with it. Otherwise, okay, cool. You're the guy that busts out his guitar at the family reunion and everybody thinks you're cool. And then it never goes anywhere. Once you step out of your house to do something with it, then at that point you are fighting some level of compromise. And so in some ways it's a necessary evil. In other ways, I think it's the battle that artists face. I mean, I'm dealing with it now with, okay, you write a script. Well, there's not enough action, or there's not enough this or not enough that. And then it's like, well, how much can you bend before you break? And what's that worth to you?
That whole conversation can lead them in. The more you get, you alluded to it earlier, Robert, that the more you get the suits involved, the worse it gets. Mm-hmm. Like you want to crush the soul of anything, you start getting the money people involved. Yeah. The more that I think the actors can, in the creative people can be in control of the thing, the better it turns out. Generally speaking, if they're qualified to do so. It's when you start getting the formula, the guys that are like, oh yeah, by page 10 you need to have 4 explosions and tits. I mean, that's you're just killing it.
That's the title of the next script.
4 explosions and tits. That would actually probably be a good one.
Well, okay. Because I want to get the perspective from yourself, from Kenny and Jason here, about with how you guys feel about the points that I'm making here with regards to the show. I don't know if you guys have a perception on that for yourself, because I mean, from you, Jason, for example, you are coming from purely a production standpoint, from working behind the scenes. Do you have a perception for yourself about how you prefer to look at the industry, or are you kind of neutral in that respect because of that behind the scenes aspect that you're coming from here?
I I agree with what they're saying. It's just, it's all out there. It's a weird, crazy business. And it is like, once you try to figure out and get money involved, and there's always a level of compromise, which is kind of the point of the story of Rough Cut is kind of what we always fought, is that if we want money and we want to try to grow, what are we willing to sacrifice? And that's just kind of the nature of the beast a little bit. So and it goes with behind the scenes, because you need the money for everything. You need the money for cameras, you need the money for all this kind of stuff. But it's like, you want to grow and get better, and you want all the new fancy toys, but what are you willing to give up to do it?
Do you personally ever get married to like some of the because in this case for Rough Cut, you read the script, you understand what the story was that was going to be laid out there, and I understand for yourself there's a bit of a personal investment with it, because of who's involved and the story that's behind all this here. That's kind of more or less, it's inspired from each one of you guys here. But outside of that, in this case for Outsiders production, when you work on another production, is there a part of you that gets married to that production that you're working on, or do you come from a neutral standpoint on how it's a job that I love doing, but I understand the circumstances. I'm not too concerned about it. But once I'm working with outsiders here, then I know there's a different level of investment for me to be able to invest a different type of time that maybe I would not be so much focused on, as opposed to where I may be working on another production that I have no say in the matter here.
I mean, for me, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Outsiders it's ours. It's what we want to do. It's our creativity and it's our passion. I mean, there's always going to be more interest and drive in that for me personally. But I don't work on as much stuff outside of Outsiders as like Adam and Kenny do, So.
And what about for you, Kenny? Anything that you want to add on to that you can take from your perspective on that?
Yeah. Even going back to Latrice, that's really cool. Like Adam said, perspective. That's awesome. That's a testament to even Julia. I hope she watches this, because that you put that thought into it if she didn't do a good job. So thanks for your comment on there. That's opened me up to think about that even world more, about that situation in real life more. So that was really cool. Going along with that latter part, going to a different set, it's I always see different ways I would do it when I'm on a different set. It's like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. The difference between being married to an idea or the way you're used to doing things, it's like you don't say anything when you're on those other sets. The cool thing about being on our sets, we can talk with each other, especially us four. Hey, this idea, what do you think about that? Or hey, I see this coming up. Or did you think about this? Or hey, what if we tried it this way? We all can do that tactfully and in a cool way. And so I'm never married to any other way. Maybe I'm let down. Oh, you're doing it that way? Oh, that sucks. I wish I could tell somebody about that and not get kicked off the set. But the way we do it, I like our protocol and reactions to each other as far as the closeness to the other one. There's even a second part to what I said about seeing another set do it their way. It's like, okay, it's not the way I would have done it, but is this good? Do I think this is good? Do I think this is going to make it? There was one time where I saw, the only time I really commented maybe on a bad way was there was this sign the art department put on an armored car. Adam might remember that situation. I was like, this looks like a piece of crap. I was like, I hope they don't show that on the camera. And that's just an example of kind of every part on the set. We're always thinking about, oh, they could have shot it here. Oh, the art department could have done this. Oh, why didn't they do this with the wardrobe? There's so many, I think, going into what you said, there's so many aspects of the film. If any of us are on it, we don't just see, Jason doesn't just see through the camera lens, oh, I would have done this angle. We all see different ways of how we would have done the whole damn project.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense there. Okay, so then this will lead then into Play Loud, because this is actually something that I'm actually learning more about now, as more or less being Chad's baby, if you will, if I remember hearing correctly.
Right.
Because this was something that I had learned from Adam, which I had no idea because I'd never heard of the show beforehand, and Adam had said before,
you, sir.
Well, I learned about it now, so you're welcome. No, I'm joking.
Thank you.
No, but I didn't know that, one, the show it was out there, but secondly, I didn't know that you guys had won an Emmy for that here. You guys had won 3 Emmys for, I think, the first season or second season, if I can't recall correctly how you had informed me, Adam. But this is the part that this is one of the reasons why I had asked about you being reached out to about your previous projects here, of because of the quality work you guys had delivered with a compelling story and so on and so forth, and then getting awarded for what you guys have done, and I believe deservedly so too, for Play It Loud, because there's a lot of great things that I've taken away from the show. And Adam kind of more or less kind of gave me a perspective about how it can be kind of difficult doing interviews. Trust me, I know I do this pretty frequently, but again, as I said before, that was one of the reasons why I was asking about that, because I figured that, not that I expected it, but I figured to some degree that maybe someone would have noticed that, hey, outside of production had made this show. It's won a few Emmys. What else have they done? And then as a result of that, look into your work and kind of seeing, oh, they've also done this as well too. Let's see if they have other ideas that we may want to consider looking into along the way, that we may want to work with on and develop a relationship to make some property of some sort. So again, but with Play It Loud, it's not a standardized talk show, if you will. It's more, it's definitely set up in an environment where you have the guests having their guard let down and being able to converse and talk about their experiences and life on the road and so on and so forth. And Adam, I've told you before too, that I felt like your questions were very compelling and very engaging, because it gave them something to think about as well too. So there's a lot that I've taken away from there, apart from the production aspect of it as well too, where the cinematography looks phenomenal, the way the camera's being moved around when they're performing on stage or wherever they are performing, whether being outside or in some sort of bar or wherever it may be. But you definitely get a different perspective of getting Adam's point of view, and then getting the guest point of view, and then getting a wider view of the overall art process of what they've made that you guys are conversing about here. So shooting something like that for all of you guys, having the experience you guys had, work on a number of productions you have worked on, and then be able to work on this here. I'm curious about what it is about your thought process on how you guys want to approach the show. Was it organic that you guys figured out along the way as you guys were shooting it, or was this kind of figured out beforehand and then you figured out, okay, so now we know this works, so the episode 2 we're not going to do this again because we like this perspective better, and then so on and so forth. So if whoever may want to answer that in starting off here to about how you guys were looking into getting Play It Loud started.
Beard, that's you.
So yeah, so that it came about because I'm the marketing director for the Grand Casino, which is the sponsor basically, and that's where the last performance is filmed on our stage there at the casino.
Right.
So I was looking for a way from the casino side to build some content around our concert venue, and then to also be involved in the community and in Oklahoma and kind of get our brand out there that way. It's something that no other casino does, and really not many businesses do. So it's just an interesting way and a way to create content that would be evergreen and have the casino's logo on it. Knowing that we have the capabilities that we have, I went to Adam first. I think it was Adam first because I had in my mind that I wanted it to be. I'm a big fan of Anthony Bourdain and play Austin City Limits. So when I approached him, I said, I want to make a show, basically Adam Bourdain's show, but with musicians solely, like Austin City Limits. So that's kind of how the format came out. I had come up with an idea for the very first episode with TJ, because I've known TJ since he was a kid, and kind of had that scripted out in terms of how it would go and what it would look like. I talked to Jason about it, talked to guys about it. We filmed a demo of that, and I presented that to my bosses. They loved it. A year and a half later, figured out how to get it funded. And then we reshot that episode, basically the same sort of format. And really after that, we kind of had that formula in mind. And from there, Jason really just took over. And now it's like, we kind of know where we're going, and he knows the shots that he wants and how it flows and how it needs to edit together. And when Adam comes in with his narration, and we've shot 30 something episodes now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, not that it's formula, but there is a method to it.
Right.
And so that's kind of how it came about and sort of the way it flows.
So for you, Chad, to kind of piggyback off of that, because you mentioned before about Anthony Bourdain being kind of more or less the inspiration for the flow of the show, was there any concern that it was going to be a bit of kind of like copycatting that style of show that he would normally host for his respective field, or were you confident knowing that, okay, so I know Adam is good at this, so I'm sure he'll figure out what's going to work for him to be able to ask the questions you want to ask? Or were you kind of involved with the questions that you should be asking to be able to kind of get something out of the artist that will, in a lot of ways, kind of help promote the casino, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, also help promote you guys to bring more awareness for what you guys are trying to put out there?
Oh, Adam's good with people. I mean, he's personable. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to, he interviews people just in conversation. I mean, because he's curious about people and their lives, and just who he is. I mean, that he's done that ever since I've known him. He's always the guy sitting around the table that's like, all right, top 10. So, getting to know people is part of who he is. So that transition is literally just let him go, let him do his thing. And then obviously knowing his writing style and what he's capable of, knew that was going to be money. And then in terms of like, are we copycatting Anthony Bourdain? If anybody's paying attention, I mean, sure. Jason's also a fan of Anthony and the shooting style. And we had lots of conversations about how it was shot. And we're not like directly ripping off shot for shot, but just Anthony Bourdain changed the whole nature of travel television, in my estimation. So
it's more like a template for how you guys want to go about it.
Well, sure. I mean, you have something that works, and we're capable of it. And I think maybe he would be flattered had he ever gotten a chance to see it. I would hope that he would see that, hey, there's these guys kind of picking up the torch and taking, what he did and moving it forward, which is I mean, if you think about it, like every director's first question is really any artist is, well, who's your influence? Oh, well, it's Dylan, or it's, Spielberg or whatever. So,
well, and I'll say this: I've never watched an episode of Anthony Bourdain.
yeah.
So like,
which makes it,
Yeah.
perfect.
Like,
it's more like just I think it's not ripping off necessarily. It's just the concept of like an interview show. And my perspective, the reason I like it is it's more interesting being in real world environments. You're not just sitting. You're not sitting on a set stage just talking to somebody. It's like you're getting out in the world. You're getting out in their environments, places that they're connected to them, hopefully somehow. And it's just going to make visually more interesting. It's going to make everything just more interesting and have potentially more interaction, and that's
plus I mean, like, it's straight science that people are more interesting in bars. So like
you got a point. Yeah,
no joke. Like,
you got a point.
Let's sit down at a dimly lit bar and suddenly people are cooler, they're funnier, they're more attractive. Everybody wins in that environment. That's why we go.
Right.
So I mean, there's that, and I mean, Beard, Chad, to the uninitiated, but Beard, he sold it. He really sold us on it because it was the idea of artists talking to artists. People get on an outsider set, and one thing that I think helps the interview process is we're brothers. These are my brothers. They will carry my casket. When we get on a set, everybody's chill and cool and hanging out and laughing, and we're working while we're doing all of it, but it's a very relaxed, very, very open atmosphere. And Kenny Pitts is a musician, Beard is a musician. These guys play music, they love musicians. Jason Alexander is very knowledgeable about the scene. I'm basically like, I live in a box in the woods. Neutral,
basically.
Yeah, I live in a box in the woods. I listen to like Bruce Springsteen, and then they bring me out. I don't know anybody or anything. I talk to these people, and then they put me back in the
Counting
dark.
Crows too.
Yeah, and Counting Crows.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Beard really sold it. I mean, like I remember whenever it was in the early stages, the way that I kind of took the pitch was that we're going to sit around and compare battle scars. Like, and Beard was saying, dude, talk about what you've seen. Talk about what we've been through, so that they're seeing you as an artist and not as a journalist, because there's a different people they treat. We don't trust journalists. We're afraid what they're going to try to find out about us, as opposed to like, hey, yeah, I've been there too. I almost screwed up my marriage too. Oh yeah, this was hard. And then I remember whenever we were trying to come up with a name for it, and I don't know what we were like looking at or what was circling the drain for a title. And I'm pretty sure it was Beard that came up with the callback to Rough Cut, which was whenever my character Fran is talking about Bob Dylan, and when he turns to his band and says, "Play it fucking loud," and that was kind of the rallying cry for the group in Rough Cut. And he unfortunately dropped their profanity, and we ran with that as sort of a show about defiance. Like, these are underdog, sometimes artists that are like scraping by, and sometimes a culture or an environment that doesn't, if it didn't come from the coast, it's not real music, and I think there's something really beautiful about those stories. Those are compelling stories.
Yeah, I agree. So Jason, for you, let me ask you about the look of the show, but also the timing of the show too, because I know you had some say in the matter here too, from what I understand. But because the show, each episode is about 20 minutes. I think the longest was maybe 30 minutes, if I recall correctly. But it's usually at a certain cap, about 20 minutes and 25 and some change or something like that. With the amount of footage you guys get, is it difficult for you to figure out? Okay, so they talked about this particular subject matter about their lives or their career, and then having to condense that into that time frame. At the same time, having Adam do his voiceover in the beginning of the episode to kind of more or less give an insight about what to be expecting for that said artist during that episode. So is there an approach you had in the beginning that may have changed along the way as the season progressed, where you felt comfortable about how you would be able to kind of more or less put everything together to turn out as well as it does?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the time lengthwise has definitely changed over the over the seasons. I don't know if there's ever a set conversation with Chad or anything about like how long they exactly needed to be. But when it started out, I think we all kind of had the mentality of being like more of a web-based show. So let's keep them 15, 20. You know, people don't want to sit in front of the computer longer than, 20 minutes or so. So let's try to keep them in that range. And then now that it's gone on, I think the ballpark is I try to keep them under 30. It's kind of what I aim for now. So that's kind of how that's evolved. But yeah, it is sometimes a challenge. I mean, they'll talk anywhere from 40 minutes to a couple hours sometimes on camera. And to knock that down to probably 15 to 20 minutes of conversation to wrap it around, leaving time for Adam to write too, and then have a song at the end. Yeah, it's difficult. Basically, what happens is the way it usually flows, if we have time, is I'll send out the whole episode, the whole interview, just so everybody can watch it, and basically just ask, hey, what do y'all not want to lose? And then from there, I kind of have free reign to chop it down. I asked for a little bit of opinion on what do y'all think is good, what do we need to keep, and then chop it down. I reorder it and kind of get a little bit of an idea of where it might go, and then I hand it over to Adam and be like, hey, now is this an order you can write some stuff to? And just kind of bounce back and forth from that. And then usually try to figure out an interesting way to open it and a different way to open it, which seems like we're running out of. They we have about 4 ways now I think they open, so.
Well, how about for you, Kenny? Because if I recall correctly, you also do help with the show too. I'm unfortunately I didn't catch up with all the behind the scenes setup for what you partake in here. So do you have any insight about how you go about with helping out with the show, and to what degree do you have any sort of say as far as how the overall product is handled here?
Yeah, everything they do is ran by me, and I just kidding. No, this is it's really cool the way it goes, because we're all music fans, we're all lovers and of the scene. We're all lovers with each other of the scene. I saw you laughing at him. I'm producer on this. It's more of Jason has such a great way of even a director's aspect of shooting and filming that, and I'll come up with ideas and stuff. Hey, we got this here, or I'll even try to find locations that are good for filming, except maybe those front rooms that I mentioned that you didn't like. But we'll have we'll just have a great relationship back and forth of talking about the locations, and if hey, this is a good shot over here, we can go over there. I'll throw ideas out there. As far as interview side, I'll come to Adam away from everybody else to not interrupt it, or if we're on a break, I'll talk about what I might know about the band or history we have with them, and try to throw that out for him to use if he wants to. And then Chad and I do a lot of clerical admin
paperwork
side of it. Yeah. So it's just
you should go back to the beginning though, and we didn't really talk about this. Kenny produced basically everything up to Play It Loud. I mean, he was the producer for Charlie. I mean, he was the producer for all of Rough Cut. So all the scheduling and all the contacting and all that stuff, he did all that. So he had a skill base for that coming into Play It Loud. And I have to, because of my relationship with the casino and the way that all works, I have to do a lot of that producing from my side, because it's in tandem with the casino. Right. But certainly, Kenny's capable of doing any of it.
So then this leads me to my next question about the Emmy, the Emmys, the 3 Emmys you guys have won. How is that presented to you guys about the nominations and then winning it? Because honestly, I don't necessarily watch Emmy Awards, not for any reasons. I just never get around to watching it. But I'm curious for you guys, considering that this is more or less like a web-based show. Was there any understanding that there's a possibility you guys, if anything, if this were to work out well, that there may be some recognition in that capacity for you to be able to be nominated, and if an opportunity were to arise for you to actually win it, what that could present for you guys as far as Outsiders Productions is concerned, for you to be able to hopefully garner more opportunities from that, if anything at all. So are you guys able to kind of commentate on that, how that came to be and how things have gone since then?
We have to enter.
Okay.
It's an entry type situation. So.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Emmys they have tons of, there's a bunch of regions, there's national, there's primetime, there's daytime, and then they have a bunch of regions across the United States. So since our show is not a national show, it's a regional based with a select audience, we fall into our region, which is like Denver, Oklahoma, Kansas,
Texas in ours
area.
Yeah.
No, Texas is its own thing. I think it's Colorado, Kansas.
Texas
Oklahoma,
is its own country.
Yeah, it's its own big country.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, I don't know. I can't remember how it came about, like even looking into that. Chad said something about it, and then I just started digging.
Maybe.
Found the website, found out that they take all forms of media, just as long as it's been produced for an audience, and you can prove that it is out there for an audience to view. And then there's categories, and you enter, and cross your fingers from there.
You're judged by your peers in other regions. So people in New York City or wherever, they're judging other regions.
Basically,
stuff.
like
So
you have to become a member.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to become a
And
member
we have to
get
judge.
the more affordable rates, and then you judge other regions. So it's all peer. It's very peer. It's all peer based, which makes it kind of cool too.
And behind you, Adam. And say Jason. Those are the Emmys that you guys had won behind you there. All three of those.
Those are my three back there.
Okay.
Those just so happen to be there on camera.
Right there.
Right there
on my shelves.
Nice. Okay. Well, so then upon finding out you guys were nominated and then having won, what was that like for you guys, and having to garner that award there? I mean, did you guys feel a sense of satisfaction receiving that award, or were you more or less kind of feeling like, it's nice and therefore, we're thankful? I mean, what was that thought process for all of you upon learning the nomination and then winning it?
It's pretty crazy. I mean,
I know for me, I kind of I got to kind of a very Fran point of view in my life where I'm kind of like, we're going to enter whatever, kind of okay. And then it was Jason, who I've known since we were kindergarten kids. I've not known him to show a lot of enthusiasm about much, but he was like excited about it. And so that made me excited, because I'm like, well, if Jason's pumped, then I better be pumped too.
I agree.
And then
He's a big component of it. Yeah.
And then whenever we got the nominations, I remember it did hit that it felt really nice, and validating, because we hadn't received the financial validation of any of the things that we've worked on for a decade. And so to get something like that, to be nominated and then to win, I remember when we won, I mean, we were dumbstruck, and then we just went outside and stood around the open bar and just looked at the Emmys and smile. I think it's the most I've smiled my entire life, outside of maybe the birth of my kids. And this was decidedly less stressful. And then each time, because COVID came in and sort of ravaged so much, so many get-togethers and whatnot. The next year that we were nominated, we had a socially distanced pool party at Jason's house, and we were all sitting outside waiting to see, and then the next time it was
watching a live stream. Yeah,
it was a live stream at some bar somewhere. So we've won 3 years in a row. It wasn't like 3 in 1 year. It's each of the 3 years we've entered. It's been extremely validating, man. And we get mildly cocky for like 15 minutes, and then it's like, okay, back to work.
Well, so I mean, when you guys again, I understand COVID has obviously had a factor into all this here, but was there any preconceived notion about if we were to win this year, what opportunities may this present to us all for us to be able to gain more opportunities to be able to do bigger things? Not to say bigger things as in like bigger as in outside of Oklahoma, but bigger things as in to work on productions that you guys are wanting to be able to make that would require more funding or more resources. Was there any of that for you guys as well too along the way once that became a realization for you in winning the Emmy, or was that still kind of up in the air? Like, we don't know what's going to come out of this year, so we're going to take it day by day until we see what the results are of that reward that could grant us here.
I think that story's still writing itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I think that's, my hope would be that we play that card whenever it's time. I mean, we don't have yet our next project lined up outside of continuing to work and play loud. So it's my hope that whenever we start to put that package together and start looking at what opportunities we have available, that I'm happy to walk into my meeting with Latrice carrying 3 Emmys. It won't bother me any. To see if there's some way to put that to use. I'm all about it, but I also leave that to the more intelligent collective of our group with these 3. It's not saying much, but they're smarter than I am about that kind of
okay, well, so I hope you guys don't mind me jumping back in time here for you, because this actually was one of the projects that you guys have done that I was really quite surprised with here once Adam had given me the opportunity to check it out, and that was for I had to write it down here because I always forget names, but The Unusual Calling of Charlie Christmas, because that to me, I figured that was kind of like outside of in this case of Looking for Hope, which was the birth of your guys' realization of wanting to make films, but
Yep.
the Charlie Christmas film, I think is in my opinion was a film that I came to realize that was like, okay, so we really can do this here because of the struggles you had to go through. Because I think Adam, you revealed to me that it took a number of years to get that done, and it was mainly done on free time, borrowed equipment, and a lot of heart and passion. But it was not an easy process for you guys. For everyone in making that film, was there what was that turning point for you guys that you had realized that this was something that you realized you guys had that were you guys were working on, despite the hurdles you guys were dealing with here, that made you realize that we do have something really good? Because with the way things are going for us right now and what we're seeing so far as maybe the dailies are concerned, that you realize that I think this can work really well as long as we can finish it. What was that turning point for all of you guys?
Like during the production and during the filming specifically?
Well, because I maybe I didn't answer. I asked the question correctly, but so essentially what I'm trying to ask is that because when Adam had revealed to me that it was done on everyone's free time and nights, days, and borrowed equipment, no money involved. It was literally it was just purely out of whenever we're available. But there was a lot of hurdles that I understand you all had to go through. Adam kind of alluded to the fact that it put a strain on certain relations that he had, but along the way, Jason kind of alluded to that at the end of the production that he was done. Like he was kind of tired of having to go through what he had gone through and wanted to get out. And then obviously he mentioned about him meeting his wife, but I figured that because you guys were able to finish the film, that somewhere along the way, you guys might have seen something that would have changed your perception about. Maybe I wanted to give up, but I don't want to give up now, because so far what I'm seeing of how things are turning out up to this point, it's starting to look really good. I think we have something really special that we could, if we complete it, the juice was worth the squeeze for all of us here. So I hope that made better sense with the question.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I know for me, because it had been sort of in a gestation period for quite some time. That really marked. I mean, we had worked with Beard before, but Charlie really was when Beard. I mean, that guy kind of walked in as an acquaintance, and we walked out of the movie. He was my brother, and it also, I think for me, it solidified for me Jason's talent as a shooter. But the star of that show is Kenny.
Right.
as a producer, because it's such an expansive script and there's so many locations, so many actors, so much to do. And Kenny was handling all that, and we're all carrying weight. I mean, where everybody was working, but Kenny was handling the producing aspects of that while he was working out, getting in superhero shape, while he's, you know, learning his 3 lines from that movie, while we're getting it all together. So for me, I think watching his performance, I mean, the whole movie, without Kenny, that movie doesn't work.
Right.
And how do you develop empathy and occasionally sympathy for a character who doesn't say much, who just kind of stands there, and how do you feel sorry for him without ever feeling like he feels sorry for himself? And how do you love him and worry about him without pitying him outright? And that was all down to his performance. So for me, the first thing we shot, as I recall, was the horror movie. 13th, was it 13th in Hell? Was that the first thing we shot? And I remember that night thinking, this is going to be a lot of fun, because we laughed so much shooting it. And so from the get-go, I'm like, all right, this is going to be a blast. Because of the comedic elements of the film. And then going forward from that, and then watching Kenny and his total commitment to that character. I mean, man, when you've got that kind of commitment to it, it's like, let's everybody strap down and hang on, we're going for a ride.
Well, Jason, if you don't mind, if I jump to you, because I'm actually really curious if you want to elaborate about the hardship that you were going through in making that film, because you had mentioned before that you wanted to walk away from it. You wanted to walk away more or less from the industry, if you will. Are you able to share about what that was like for you? And then what was, apart from, you know, meeting your wife later on, but during that production, did you have any perception about how you may want to just stick with it because you think you have something good that would come out of it as far as the final product is concerned? Or in this case, was it just more or less kind of, I'm just going to stick it out because these are my friends and I'm going to get the job done. And once I'm done, I'm out?
No, what it was going into, like, I think it was going into A Beautiful Day, maybe before Charlie. I was just ready to move. It wasn't that I was done necessarily. I was just like, I was considering moving. I was kind of in a weird place. I was like, I think I want to move. I had friends in Austin. I was like, I think I'll move to Austin. And I talked to Adam about it, and he was like, hey, stay around. I got this script. So I was like, all right, cool. So we started talking about that. And then that's
don't blame me for it.
And you're the catalyst.
And I got married. And so we go into it. And Charlie, for me, starting off was a totally it's kind of a weird time, because I met my wife, and then we were going to have a kid. So going into Charlie, actually, I think I stepped back and I took less responsibility starting off, if I remember right, because I was I was going to split the shooting with James, another guy that we've worked with. So going into Charlie was totally different for me than anything we'd ever done before, because I was actually trying to step back a little bit just for family responsibilities, because I knew if I jumped all in with a pregnant wife, that it probably wouldn't end very well if I was gone all the time. Mm-hmm. But then it took so long that, you know, it took us 4 years to shoot it, that, you know, halfway through it, I could spend more time, and I could commit more time. And I mean, we ended up making something that I think we all love, and the time was amazing. Sorry.
And what about for you, Chad? Because this was kind of more or less your introduction to working with outsiders, if I understood correctly. Or was that like kind of a turning point for you to in getting to know the guys and having seen how they work, that eventually developed into a much stronger relationship, into a form of brotherhood with these guys, where you knew somewhere along the way that, okay, this is going to work out? Maybe, you know, I'm not sure if you felt that way about the film, or you felt that way about the guys, and, you know, having different thoughts about the film throughout the process during the production. Like, what was your perspective on that?
As Jason was getting married, I was getting a divorce. So, I mean, it was, and I had been kind of, you know, isolated at that time, and then I met them originally on a different project altogether, loosely, and then there was an article in the paper saying they were going to shoot this movie, and said, if you want to volunteer, call Kenny Pitts. And so I called Kenny Pitts, and showed up to some production meetings, and the next thing I know, I'm holding a boom in an alley at 3:00 in the morning. And over that time and being involved in something where you're putting that much time and effort into it, and we were all, basically alcoholics. So, as much hanging out and having a good time with people, and then the relationships get developed, and you spend that much time in the trenches with somebody doing something that's that difficult. It's going to lead to those kind of relationships, and they've endured. And like Adam said, we're family, and there are those times when you watch the dailies and you watch a rough edit, and you're like, man, that's really good. But at the end of the day, I think it's more that we leaned into each other, and we wanted to do it. Like maybe somebody would fall or have a tough time or something be going on in somebody's life, and then somebody else steps up, or they're there for you personally, and you want to toe that line for your pals.
There's something to be said, I think, about in terms of friendship, and going and kind of following along with that sort of what Beard's saying. And for the record, Beard's name, which is almost at this point, he should probably be rebaptized with Beard as his Christian name. He worked on When I Find Bin Laden.
I gotta say that.
He worked on When I Find Bin Laden with us. That's when we met him, and we didn't know him, and so it became kind of shorthand when it would be like, okay, who's going to crew today? Who do we have? And is the bearded guy going to be there? Is the guy with the beard going to? And then it became, is Beard going to show? Because we were calling it behind his back because we couldn't remember Chad. What as difficult as that name is. And then at some point we just started calling it to his face.
I had a nickname before I even knew I had a nickname.
I didn't know if he knew it. The first time it was called to his face, I was like, wait a minute.
But there's something to be said in terms of that spiritual component and the true love that I have for these guys. There's something to be said about friendships that are born out of difficulty.
Yeah.
It's easy to have friends where you're like, hey, let's meet at a nice restaurant where we're going to have a nice meal at our convenience and air conditioning. And then whenever the conversation starts to go stale, hey, that's great. Here comes the check. And then we all go home.
Right.
Or relationships that are simply based on convenience. It's whenever you can be in nastiness with these people, where you break through a lot of that civility and get to the meat of who people are and character shows, and that's how you really that's why those bonds that can be formed on movie sets, I think, are very unique, especially at this age, and so I think that's something beautiful about it. It's friendships aren't made at premieres and after parties. They're made at 4 a.m. when everybody's like, okay, it's time to go home and try to get 3 hours of sleep before we're back on set again. But nobody's really wanting to leave the parking lot because somebody's hot with jokes, or there's a 6-pack.
All right, so Kenny, I actually, because I wanted to save you for last because you being the star of the film, but I wanted to save you for last because there was a lot that I'm picking up from you in our conversation, especially when you first had joined into the invite here. But having seen your performances you've done with Rough Cut and especially with Charlie Christmas, I'm the characters that you're playing. To me, you don't strike me as those individuals. You have a complete opposite personality. You seem very forthcoming. You seem very approachable. You seem very friendly. And obviously the characters you play, especially with Charlie Christmas, where it's a little more, you have a little bit more of a reservedness about you. You have a very introverted personality, especially with Charlie Christmas. But with Sue, on the other hand, you're pretty blunt, and you have a very brash personality. So, in sticking with Charlie Christmas, for me, this was one of those films. I believe that I always hope that if given the right under the right circumstance, if someone were to watch this movie, what I really do hope would happen one day is that, apart from seeing the overall work that was put into the film, but I hope that someone would take notice of you as an actor and seeing the subtle things you do in the film. And I do mean that when I say that, because I'll use a scene as an example where I think it was the principal's office that you had a scuffle with a coach, and it was obviously the coach is the one that instigated it, and you pretty much put him in a spot. But what was unique about that particular scene for me was because that was where you get to see more about how people still treated Charlie disrespectfully and abusing that relationship they have with him and trying to be manipulative because he doesn't speak up and he takes the beating. And there's a certain facial expression that you have with that performance, and a certain way that you carry yourself that I thought was very effective. That really showed a dichotomy of the character where you clearly see they hate the situation they're in. They want to do something about it, but they're so trained to do otherwise that somewhere along the way, something had changed for them to be able just to not have to put up a fight anymore. And you kind of get a lot of that in the beginning of the film, but that scene in particular was kind of like where you kind of got the overall arc of the character, where how they were starting in their lives at some point and what changed along the way, to see how people are taking advantage of him and he's not doing anything about it until the story progresses. He changes his approach, of course. So I don't mean to go long-winded with this one here, but I wanted to give you your flowers in that respect, because I felt like that particular performance from you, in my opinion, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from, was actually the best I've seen so far of you, because I think there's something about that particular performance where you have subtle comedy moments in the film, which there were a few, but there was definitely a lot more heartfelt moments that to me seemed very, very authentic. And I know that from my experiences with you so far in our conversation here, you're not that person, but because it was done so effectively that, as cheesy as it's going to sound, as cliches may sound, but it seemed very real to me. So my question to you now is that, when you look at your performance now, and I'm not sure if you've seen your film rather recently, but if when you look back at it or you think about it, what's the first thing that comes to your mind about that process and portraying the character and having to prepare for that? Because that's something that you're not that person, so you obviously had to find a way to be able to get into that mindset, if you will. I hope you don't mind the question, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, I thank you for all the nice words, man. Thanks for putting a lot of thought into it and liking it.
Yeah.
I use Charlie Christmas kind of as a basis, as the feeling I had during filming that movie, during the acting. I try to use that as my basis for trying to do other things even beyond then, just where I was able to take myself to think about a character. I try to always go back to Charlie and not be Charlie, obviously, just be how open I need to be for other characters. And that if I watch it now, I it's like I remember every where we were at every moment of those. So
Right.
yeah, I go back to that, and it's kind of spiritual to me. It's a feel good whenever I look back and do that.
I mean, when you think about it now though, especially with your performance, because I'm not sure if how you feel about yourself in that performance, where do you feel like that at that part of your life in terms of your acting capabilities, did you feel that when you look back as I'm still a little green in these particular areas in comparison to what you have done so far with Rough Cut, when you look up that and you say, I feel like I had more time to breathe and more time to be able to flesh out the character, and because the story is such a long form of storytelling that I have the ability to do that, to stretch out the my acting arsenal, if you will. But for Charlie Christmas, I know you had years to work on that, but it's all done somewhat sporadically, where I'm not sure if that's something that you may felt have probably affected you, where you had to kind of retrain yourself again to be able to prep for that, or have it to revisit that part of the character to be able to do that. It's kind of odd for me to ask that question, because I really don't like to ask these type of questions in that respect, because I don't want to make it seem as if I'm coming off as this being like what's the way I want to use it, generic, if that makes any sense. So, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from with that.
No, I think I totally understand. I mean, I think just the studying of taking that long time as opposed to doing other roles in the future, like with Rough Cut, just just letting that, even when not reading a script, thinking about a script is still studying and working on that. So I was able to do that longer, and that of course affected my performance in there, being able to just saturate myself more with it. So yeah, it did affect it. To what extent or to how it made me feel about that effect, I don't really know. I think it made me want to do it more, made me want to act more. At that time, I wasn't, for lack of a better term, I wasn't professional at all. I didn't have headshots. I didn't have resumes and things like that. It wasn't until like towards the end of Rough Cut that I even got that. And I think that's even more confidence in wanting to act on my own and believing in myself. I think Charlie gave that to me, doing that. Adam's belief in me and directing and writing, and everybody else's belief in me on that too, and reaction to it helped me get that confidence I need to, I hate to say, get more professional too, but it's because of how I felt when doing Charlie too. I mean, and I wanted to do it all, be an actor and stuff before Charlie, but it was an evolution of that confidence and building.
So Charlie Christmas, more or less your acting school is what you're trying to imply here. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, I could say that. I acted in other things before it,
right?
But this was really my this would be my graduation.
So, this wouldn't have had happened if it wasn't really for Brett Benman and connecting me with Adam, which I did intend on reaching out to him to let him know, hey, I'm interested in speaking with you. I would love to have a sit down and converse with you. But, again, it started snowballing to what it turned out to be now, where for me to have the opportunity to speak with you all. My only real concern, to be honest, was that because there's 5 of us conversing, I wanted to have everyone have the opportunity to speak and say something during the conversation, because I didn't want to have you guys have to be idle and waiting for everyone else to finish and then have your parts in. And I understand that's the circumstance here. So I hope you guys, I hope they didn't, you guys were not bored and under those circumstances there in that respect. But what I do want to say to you all is that I am a genuine fan of what you guys have done for what I've come across with Charlie Christmas, Play Loud, and Rough Cut. I'm really excited to see the final, this episode of Rough Cut that has not been released yet. We'll love to see how everything turns out and in that particular season, if you will. So, I want to give you guys your props, because hearing your story and having you guys share, your perspective about how you guys felt about shooting on the productions you guys have worked on and your perception on the industry, especially on Oklahoma, how you guys feel you have changed along the way with your approach in the filmmaking process, writing, and so on and so forth. This was pretty much what I was expecting to get out of here. I honestly wish I had more time to be able to do to have this conversation with you, and I'm hoping we can do that in the upcoming future here. So, is there anything that you guys would like to say, and anything you guys are able to talk about, and any sort of upcoming projects that you guys may be able to announce here, or possibly hint at that may be coming down the pipeline that you guys are able to elaborate on here, and then say anything in closing for yourselves?
Well, first, man, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity. You've done a hell of a job juggling 3 massive egos and then myself, and I think that takes skill. I appreciate it. Don't come chasing down my job and Play It Loud. Thanks for having us, man. Your research really it betrays a real respect that you have for your people, the folks that you interview, and so thank you for showing that respect and for doing that, man. It means a lot to us. I think to have our stuff watched and seen and understood is the best. So thanks for doing that. We are always working. I mean, we've got Play It Loud right now. We're about to drop a new episode of Play It Loud, and more to come after that. And Kenny's always out there. Kenny's out there acting. Beard is writing. Jason, for his day to day, he shoots, edits, and does all this business. So we're always working, and then it's my dream, absolute dream, to have Outsiders come back together on a feature narrative. We just got to get the money behind it to make sense, so that we can put forth the quality storytelling that I think I don't want to sell ourselves short by working at a level that we've grown past.
Right.
And so it's important that we are able to match, I think, the talent that we bring to the table.
And for the rest of you guys, anything you just want to say in closing with this?
I'd say thanks again. Yeah, absolutely. Adam kind of nailed all the what's next kind of stuff. We've got three more episodes for this season, and then a whole other season after that for Play It Loud. So, and then kind of decide, what direction to take that. And absolutely, if somebody gets the hint that you've dropped throughout, it's if they want to reach out to us and help us elevate that, or anything that we've done or do, we're open to those conversations for sure.
Yeah. So. Well, that's definitely the goal here for me on helping to hopefully bring more awareness in. As I hate to say it like this, but I'm hoping that one day I'm able to be able to position where I would have more notoriety, not for the fame and glory. That's not why I'm doing it here, but really to be able to present opportunities to speak with filmmakers such as yourselves that have wonderful projects that many people may not have heard of, but I'm hoping that with bringing more awareness, it will allow them to be able to to develop the confidence to knowing that someone had taken the time to look into this here, and it's really worth their time to check it out. And I'm hoping that vote of confidence will give them the incentive to do that here. So that's what I'm aiming for here. But for the cameras here, I'm going to say thank you to all of you guys again for giving it your time, because I think this story that you guys are sharing here is really worth listening and really worth telling here. So I hope people will take the time to give you guys your flowers as well for what you guys have done, because you guys do produce some quality stuff. And I love what you guys have done here from what I've come across so far. And if you guys are having some more work down the line that you're going to be working on here, I'm very excited and very confident it's going to be, if not good, if not just as good, if not better from what I've seen before here. So that's how much confidence I have in all you guys for what you guys have been able to show here so far. So if anything, props to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
all
brother.
right, guys.
And let me say this.
Sure.
I didn't say this, but Rough Cut episode 4 is going to drop this year. Like that is my solemn vow to these guys, to their wives, to everybody that worked on it. We're going to get it done. We're going to put it out this year. Also, got to say hi to my kids, Ford and Scout. Thanks again, Robert, man. I really appreciate you, brother.
No, the honor was mine, guys. I didn't mean that here. All right, so